if you had a job where you come to work and people clap for you, it would change your entire mood.
We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC.
Or you can grow a conscience in the next 5 minutes and see where that takes you.
Don't this hit make my people wanna stop? Don't this hit make my people wanna stop? Don't this hit make my people wanna stop?
Watch the series finale of X-Men next Saturday morning. Check your local listing.
What the hell going on?
Oh, we heard tale of a party.
Gangnam Style. Open Gangnam Style. There can be only one magical Negro.
Come el tiki que llama que buena baila usted a la vuelta papi otra vez llegó el negro de.
It won't take long when there's a song to help you set the pace.
Howling holler from the heart.
This is pathetic.
Where we used to live.
Life could be worse.
This is the worst.
This is the worst.
This is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
Ai, menina, vida, chega aí. Ai, menina, vida, chega aí. Vai, quebra, tem mais, vai. Menina, chega aí. Vai, olha, danado. Eita!
And the Disney stock just keeps going down and down and down.
I'm bag of pixie dust. Contraband.
They're going to do the Mary Poppins thing. They're going to do it. They're going to do it.
Yeah. Magic mirror on the wall. The fairest one of all.
Oh, bitch, you killed Kenny.
Kenny.
You fat hoe.
I get it. I'm not persecuted. I'm just an ass.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm Reina, the Reina Creole, of course, always bringing you that spice when it comes to sci-fi and pop culture analysis. And speaking of that, welcome to the Spice Lounge, because here on this show, we give you that unfiltered opinion when it comes to what's cracking over here in these pop culture streets. Of course, we are going to be talking about, oh my gosh, several things, but more importantly, there's a certain Star Trek Starfleet Academy actress who thinks that people like myself are just haters because we don't like Starfleet Academy. All right, well, I'm a member of the Player Haters Ball then. Call my justified opinion hate if you want, but you dismiss a lot of Star Trek fans, and that's pretty much what we are pissed about. So we're going to be talking about that. I've got author Douglas A. Burton and Kamran Pasha on the show because they're going to both be discussing the quote-unquote price of woke, whether it's the left wing, if you don't like it, you don't like woke, and the extreme right crazy, everything is woke, And let's just say when everything is woke, then nothing is, so to speak. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So glad you guys are here between YouTube and X. Let me bring on my guests. I've got author Douglas A. Burton, and I have got Kamran Pasha, both friends of the channel. How are you folks doing tonight?
Cameron? I'm doing great. I've missed being on. It's been a very long time. I always love coming on your channel. You have such a wonderful channel. You have such honest opinions. And then you have a really good group of people in the chat usually. So it's always delighted to be here. I'm excited to talk about the things we're going to talk about today. I know Douglas has some interesting stuff he's going to share.
Yes. I'm so excited. I remember when he talked about it, I'm just like, I can't cram it all in on one show, Mr. Brett. I'm gonna have to bring everybody back. So I'm so glad you guys are back. You guys are friends of the channel. So always good to have you here. Also, I had people asking, when is Kamran coming back? When is Doug coming back on the show? I'm like, okay, I have to fix it in the in the schedule. So I'm so glad to have you guys here. Let's see, you guys are starting to filter on in. So good to see all of you. I like seeing you guys. I like doing I call it the drive-by high, so to speak. So I remember being in the chat, and some people tend to do these live streams and forget that the chat is here, but I would not be here without you guys in the chat, because you are the co-host, so to speak, of the show. And if it weren't for you guys, we could just be up here just talking to one another. Not as much fun as when you guys in the chat throw stuff out there and just I love talking to y'all. Well, we got plenty of spice. Let me show you one thing. Well, let's jump into hot topics, shall we? But let's catch up on something we saw last week out at Tokyo Disneyland. Apparently what happened was, and I believe this is because it was nesting season, you had crows that were taking pieces of Rapunzel's hair out. Literally taking pieces out of her hair. It was so bad that they had to remove the animatronic.
Oh my God.
Wait, so who's taking the pieces out? I'm getting what's happening here?
Crows. Well,
crows.
They're not here now. But crows were taking pieces out of her hair, out of the animatronic.
So this is an ineffective scarecrow. The idea is that crows stay away from human-looking figures, and this doesn't work.
I think it probably looked a little too alive, but I also think it had a lot to do with the fact that it was more than likely nesting season, and they're thinking, we got this animatronic or whatever. It's not a threat. We can just,
That's just Rapunzel. We can do that. We
can just steal, hair out of it. I should have had the before one pulled up here. That's my bad. I should have had that. But to make a long story short, the solution that they did, and this is pretty much what they do in the beaches out in Florida, is, you probably can't see it's hidden, but like fishing line that they put. It's kind of like a hash to like prevent the crows from trying to pull her hair out.
How does it work? Is the line on the hair, or is it used as a net behind it somehow? How does it work?
Usually
it looks
like above, right?
Yeah, it's usually something like above, because now that I'm looking at it, I don't know if it can stop the crows from coming right straight down at her. But I know, like on the boardwalk or at the beaches here in Florida, where there's patios for people to eat, they usually have like a curtain of fishing line that's like in a crisscross pattern to discourage birds from coming down and trying to take your food.
Yeah, I've seen that on residential homes too, to prevent owls and things like that from coming down. I think it's just meant to harass the birds and deter them from future landings.
Yeah, it is, because Universal had the same issue happening when they were building the Velocicoaster, and we have a lot of birds of prey out here. So Osprey thought, hey, I can just make my nest all the way up here on this high hat. And they kept trying to encourage the osprey to go away, and it didn't work, because it kept coming back and kept building a nest and everything, till they finally put like something as high over to the side to kind of encourage them to go over there, and they finally went over there.
Well, look, it's what Hitchcock showed in the movie The Birds, right? Ultimately, we're human beings are only ruling this planet because the birds are letting us do it, right? It comes out of
yes.
The moment they decide we're done, we're done.
100%.
Be nice to the birds. Be nice to the birds, Rapunzel.
Be nice, or else they're gonna take your hair out some more. Well, going from Rapunzel to something else that I'm actually very, very happy is being received so well. Coming to us from Deadline, One Piece Season 3 gets title release, year, and plot details. Lego animated special set, new animated series, first look released by Netflix. Have you gentlemen ever watched the anime One Piece, or have you watched the live action One Piece on Netflix at all?
I have not watched the anime, but I am now curious about it. Let me tell you, I just discovered this show. It went over my head in 2023. It barely registered. I remember kind of hearing about it. My son was like, "Let's watch One Piece," and at first I was like, "What the heck is this?" I thought it was so bizarre, and then I sat down and then I pretty much binged it. I am a huge fan of this show. One Piece is awesome. I'm about halfway through the second season. And when you said this was going to be one of your topics, I was super happy just because I was happy about the news that there's a season 3 ready to go.
Absolutely. Kamran, have you watched One Piece at all?
I have not, but I have one advice for them on this project. I think they need to hire some of the Iranian consulate Lego guys. I think if there's no greater masters of Lego storytelling than those guys. So I think that's who they need to get.
Well, this show, I had only watched bits and pieces of the anime. I have a couple of the manga.
Yeah.
And One Piece live action on Netflix has managed to avoid a lot of the problems that happen with that abomination known as a Cowboy Bebop live action.
Yeah.
They have actually created the show with the blessing and involvement of Eiichiro Oda, who wrote the original and the original manga and the anime, and the live action is just incredible. It's so much fun to watch. If you haven't read the manga, don't worry about it. If you haven't watched the anime, don't worry about it either. You will absolutely enjoy it. So apparently for season 3, awesome. There's going to be the Battle of Alabasta, which got set up at the end of season 2. So that's where they're going to be going for season 3. And if that isn't enchanting enough, here is a shot at the new anime that they're going to be doing. There's the original one that's out, but they're creating a new anime. It's going to be produced by Wit Studio. Wit Studio has also done, I believe, Spy Family and a couple of other animes. So this is without the filler, because the One Piece anime is like 1,000 and some episodes.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to catch up with.
How long are these episodes?
For this one, I don't know how long because it's new, but the existing One Piece anime that's out there is over like 1,000 episodes.
Right. So it started in like the 1990s, and I think it kind of immediately around 1997, 98 went into anime, Japanese anime, like cartoon type shows, and it picked up a huge following, and it's so bizarre. It reminds me of like Quentin Tarantino, where every time there's a new character, it's like, boom, you get like a title card, and this character is like larger than life and, completely over the top. All the One Piece characters are completely over the top, ultra archetypal. And then it's got, in my opinion, a super positive message. It's about the morality of following your dreams. And I love that. I could not get enough of One Piece. It's such a good show.
It really is the whole, like, the hero's journey, the friends that you make along the way, the struggles that your friends have, sticking up for one another, putting your life on the line for each other, and all for that grand adventure. Well, and that's what makes it so amazing.
Yeah, and I'll try to summarize it in one scene that to me was like the defining moment where I was like, I am now a complete fan of this show. There was a character whose dream it was to be the greatest swordsman in the world. and he had to fight this known rogue who's completely lethal. And this rogue doesn't take him seriously at all. He fights him with like a almost like a pocket knife or a dagger. And he was about to kill him, and he almost kills this character. And one of the other characters, her name is Nami. She's like, you should have stopped this fight. He was overmatched. You should have stopped it. And she gives him a laundry list of all the reasons why the captain should have stopped this fight. And the captain's like, I would have stopped this fight for every reason you just listed, but one, getting in the way of his dream of being the greatest swordsman. And I was like, oh man, what a great principle that this captain lives by. So what One Piece, and One Piece refers to the treasure, the unfindable treasure. It's called One Piece that all the pirates in the world are looking for to go after. And so you get basically this like mercenary gang of dreamers that form teams and go out and look for this One Piece treasure. And it's absolutely captivating. It's great storytelling. It's pure Japanese anime. So it's wild storytelling, and I can't get enough of it.
And to make it even more hilarious, because Lego is a huge franchise, I'm probably going to get claimed for this, but I don't care. But just with what Doug said, this literally summarizes what One Piece is. There's Smoker.
Smoker, I love him. Oh, there's the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
It looks cool.
Luffy.
That is going to sell out. So I suggest if you want the actual, Legos, go and get them. But yeah, there's going to be.
My son already has one set. It's the Arlong Park set. And he also has the Straw Hat Crew flag in his room. So both of my sons both of them. One's 10, one's 13. Love this show. Even my wife, who doesn't usually get into some of these, sat down and watched this. So there's something about this show. There's real magic to it.
There's something in it for everyone. And honestly, in the beginning, I heard so much whining about the casting. Oh, it's a diverse cast. They're going for diversity, blah, 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 whatever. It's just like, it's a good show. It's an anime that's beloved around the world. Just enjoy it. And it blew up. Literally, it blew up on Netflix. It blew up so good. Man, Popeyes is actually going to have a one-piece meal. I hope it's not one drumstick or anything like anything like that.
That is great. Yeah, I think didn't McDonald's have something?
They did. I went and got it. The Demon Hunter, K-pop Demon Hunter's meal. I haven't been to McDonald's in years, but I went and I got that.
That is great.
The fish
By the way,
good.
Go ahead,
Which
Cameron.
one?
I'm sorry.
No, I said McDonald's fish sandwich is good. But I actually just wanted to say, just because it'll prep, we're going to talk about later when Doug brings up his material. The very fact that people are still talking about diverse casting, right? Again, I thought the point is we wanted good storytelling, right?
That's exactly right.
People wanted, right? I thought the critique was sacrificing good storytelling for, fake casting that's meant for political reasons and that overshadows storytelling rather than casting in a show that people want to watch because it's good. I mean,
yeah, but I'll say this one bit and I'll save all the rest.
Yes.
After studying all the shows that I tried to study to try to categorize and explain the woke phenomenon, one of the most surprising conclusions, or maybe it's not surprising, gender and race had almost nothing to do with it. And I have a great explanation for that and why. So here's an example, One Piece, of where the gender and the diversity, it has nothing to do. It does not, this is pure storytelling at its finest, in my opinion. And it's completely diverse. So I'll explain later, but the gender and the race actually has nothing to do with woke. There are other things that are attached to those that we'll get into, but you shouldn't be complaining about diversity just for the sake of diversity ever.
Yeah, I mean, again, that gets to the broader issues. what people are really complaining about. But we're going to get to it when the time comes.
And Lorena, this ties in. I just looked; it was just updated. The Nielsen ratings just came out for season 2, because it's about a month behind. Season 2 of One Piece just came out. Number 2 on the Nielsen ratings. Zootopia 2 is number 1. One Piece is number 2. So it charted immediately. And One Piece, the first season, ended up charting too. So this is a phenomenon. This is a big deal. This is a real thing that people are responding to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the story, again, not to drag it out, but because the storytelling is on point, the story written with the express hands-on involvement of the man who created it all. Looking at you, Disney. Just saying. Okay. Last hot topic is that, well, not the last hot topic, but next to the last one, of course, Mortal Kombat 2. The trailer is out for this. Have you gentlemen seen Mortal Kombat 1, the remake? Not the one from the 90s, which I absolutely freaking love for so many reasons.
I have not. Have you, Cameron?
I have not. I've honestly, maybe today, because I saw what we're going to be talking about today. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not following a lot of the stuff that's going on in pop culture. You're talking about, Lorena, so I'm going to try to catch up. And I'm too busy watching Ready or Not sequel, so I don't know. So I'm going to follow what your audience wants to follow. This is my educational video today.
Okay. Well, you didn't miss anything watching the first movie. Don't watch the first movie. Just watch the one from the 90s. Because you can't have Mortal Kombat without, you can't have Mortal Kombat without Mortal Kombat. I don't know how they came up with that. And you don't have Johnny Cage that was in the first one, which made absolutely zero sense. But apparently they've brought Johnny Cage back, played by Carl Urban. So now you have my attention.
Oh, wow.
Melina, Sonya Blade. I'm probably getting. Okay, that's a darn shame. He's stuck at a.
It's got a good vibe to it early on.
So he's doing like a fan thing.
Yeah, because he's an actor, and the whole thing with Mortal Kombat, at least with I'll go to the 90s movie.
Oh yeah, so I saw this in the trailer, right? I mean, I did see the trailer for this thing. I didn't see the thing itself, right? So I got the sense of it. So in the trailer, he's the actor who gets pulled into the world, sort of like Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, he's the actor who gets pulled in because no one believes that he can do all those martial arts stunts that he does. And his agents basically, hey, you want to be legit? Come join the Kumite here and prove it. And that's Hiroyuki Sanada.
He's awesome.
Right there in the yellow.
Yeah.
He's Scorpion. If you have not watched the Shogun series on Netflix, on FX, you've got to watch it.
Yeah,
it is.
That shows in recent years. Yeah.
Yeah, that actor has so much presence every time he's on the screen. It's amazing.
Yeah, he is amazing. Yeah, if they lose one more time, they lose Earth. I do like how much grittier this one is than the first one. This one has the tone that it's supposed to have, as if we lose, Earth is gone.
Oh,
it's Raiden. That's Raiden. Christopher Lambert was Raiden in the 90s version, which was really cool.
Yeah, we've been needing a Carl Urban movie. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah, I don't. What have I seen it since Star Trek? I mean, he did a really good job as Bones, I thought.
I loved him as Bones. Yeah,
he was great. He was. I was just like, wow, that's literally DeForest Kelley right there. Right there. I was really impressed.
And then he did a TV show where my old friend Michael Ealy, my old coworker Michael Ealy, was Android. He was a cop with him, something like that. Yeah.
Well, he was Dredd too. Was that 2012? For Dredd?
Yeah, Dredd. I did see that. Yeah, we don't talk about Annihilation. No, we don't. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that Mortal Kombat movie. Oh, he was in The Boys. Really?
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
now I remember. Yeah, now I remember he was in The Boys. That was not my cup of tea, but writing looked like it at that point. That's Melina. This looks good. I wonder if they'll have the George S. Clinton soundtrack from the original Mortal Kombat movie.
They're starting to figure out that adapting video games to movies really has a different formula to it. It's not linear storytelling. It seems like the new frontier here is to capture the essence of these games and to build some level of visual, replica, to replicate the game in pieces here and there when you film it. And I'm already seeing that they're doing that even in this trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the biggest gripes that I had with the first Mortal Kombat movie, the reboot, you didn't see Reptile. And that was a side quest that you had to do in the original video game. And they didn't include it. So we're just like, where the heck is Reptile? He was in the 90s.
See, I mean, the fans of the game have those kinds of questions, and you got to put them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. That is Johnny Cage.
Man, they're going with a persona here, and it's working, I think.
Yeah, this is what was missing in the first one, because Johnny Cage, he is this brash Hollywood actor. He has the martial arts chops, but people just like, oh, you're just some actor. What do you know? So he's always got that chip like on his shoulder, and he always has his sunglasses. Don't knock his sunglasses off. So that's Scorpion. We saw Sub-Zero. They're back. And that's the line that we want to hear when it comes to Scorpion. You want to hear "Get Over Here," Shang Tsung, finish him. Your soul is mine.
Oh man!
And was that was not Melina. Oh my gosh! Y'all gonna please don't pull my gaming card. I'm blanking on who she is. Katana, because she's got the fans with the
blades,
with all the blades on them. She was not in the first movie, and people were like, why the heck is she not in the first movie? But you're absolutely right, Doug, because if you play these games, these characters who should be showing up. Even if the storytelling is not linear, we expect to see them.
Well, it's becoming like, so I watched Super Mario Galaxy, and I was watching my kids react to things, and my wife and myself, and there is a thrill, and this is unique to the video game adaptation, the thrill of seeing some elements kind of in the film itself, the way they sneak them in and weave them into the story. There's a thrill that, like the Easter egg effect, and the video games, you could do this almost endlessly in a 2-hour span. So, like you said, if you're a fan of the game, at some point when you're watching the movie, you're like, give me this character. I don't care how you do it. Just give me that character. Give me that side quest. I don't care how you do it. Just give it. And so the screenwriter's like, I just got to weave it in there somehow. It doesn't have to make perfect sense. It just has to be in there, and it has to be faithful, I think, authentic to the game in a large way.
Yeah.
Much more serious. That's the tone of the 90s one, because the first remake one that they did, it just had this, so we have to worry about the whole thing between Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And it's like, no, that's not supposed to come to much later. The whole impetus, the why you keep watching is, can this group of Earth fighters save the planet? And they seem to be focusing on that much more in this one. And the real stakes, it is. It's like there's actual real stakes in this one.
Well, and he's got, as my sons would say, some riz. He's got the charisma there.
And actually is quite a masculine-looking character, which is a shame to say. It's just like, why they took it away in the first place. Now they
we never noticed it until they took it away, right? We never noticed it. It was just the natural character is going to be that way. Like Rambo is going to be a certain kind of character, right? I noticed it. With Sarah Connor is a certain kind of character in the first movie, and the next Terminator, she's a different kind of character. And you don't think, oh, she's buff now. You're like, okay, that's what she evolved into from the first movie. Now we went through this bizarro decade, and now we have to comment on it.
Yeah.
All he
Yeah, where
needs
the
is a
character
cigar.
devolved inexplicably.
Yeah.
Even the way they're framing the fonts in the background with this like single combat, almost two-dimensional, like video game style single. I think they're onto something here. I think they've kind of nailed this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's over the top the way that it should be.
It looks fun.
Yeah.
It looks fun.
What it appears to be is earnest. Like they seem to just be going with it, right? There's no commentary about how crazy it could be. They're just going with it, which you have to be in a movie like this.
Yeah, we want to go. We want to have fun. We want to see crazy ass looking characters like this one, because that's the ones you play and you fought against in the game.
Sure, right.
It's like weird weapons. Oh, Sub-Zero's back in. That's the legendary characters that people would play. Two of the most popular was Sub-Zero and Scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if Scorpion is going to take his mask off and have a flaming skull like in the 90s version. It was so we didn't expect that.
It looks like they're kind of de-emphasizing backgrounds, kind of like you would get in those old video games where the backgrounds were just kind of there or whatever, just the set that you fought in. That's coming out quick, May 8th.
Yeah, May 8th. So yeah, it's actually looking pretty good. There's that guy who lives in China. Says hello, Kamran, long time no see. Yeah, I'm gonna go check it out. I'm anxious to see if they have learned from the mistakes of the first one, because the fans routinely panned it for so many reasons.
Was the first one? I'm trying to remember. I never saw the first one, but I vaguely remember seeing the trailer years ago. So was the first one like very heavily computer animated or not? It was more live action?
No, it was a combination of live action and CGI, but the issue was the best part of the movie was the first like 10 minutes. Granted, it came out, I think, like around COVID, but literally the first 10 minutes, that just could have been it, because of the storytelling that was in it and what happened between Scorpion and Sub-Zero. They basically went back to like Edo, Japan.
Okay.
To show, to set it up, but it's like they didn't do anything really with that, and the movie was just boring. And when you talk about video game films, it's just like with Super Mario Galaxy. There's stuff we want to see, there's characters we want to see, there's certain gameplay that we want to see to keep us hooked, and it didn't with that one. So I'm hoping with the second one that they've learned their lesson about it. So I'm anxious to go and see that. I actually feel much more hype about that one than I did for the first one. The first one was forgettable. I think this is sacrilege. No, it's not. Mortal Kombat Annihilation was actually better than the Mortal Kombat reboot movie, the first one.
Well, it's interesting you said about first 10 minutes, because I had that feeling about the movie Argyle. I don't know if you guys saw Argyle.
No.
It's like the first 10 minutes is like a spoof, movie with Dua Lipa as this like femme fatale spy, and then the rest of the movie like goes on, and you're like, let's just go back to that. I want to go see that spoof movie. I just had 2 hours of Dua Lipa as a femme fatale spy. I want to watch that.
Is that the one with Henry Cavill?
Yeah.
I remember that.
It's
I
like
didn't
a
see that.
character in this novelist, right? And it's got all these twists and whatever, but it's just like, I don't know. It just, you're like, this is falling flat, even though it's an interesting idea. Let's just go back to Dua Lipa, who's a character in this right? That whole movie.
Oh, I hear you. I see. Now I'm gonna have to go watch Argyle, because I did not go and see that. But folks, we have got 53 of you folks in here between YouTube and X. Thank you so much. Please do hit that like button, share it out. My mods, please do make sure you're dropping links to Doug's channel and also to Kamran's Patreon. I would so appreciate it. It's all in the description box in the live stream, but please put it in the chat for me. So this is kind of the shot to go with the chaser that Douglas and Kamran are going to start talking about. You all know I have crashed out about Starfleet Academy on a previous show. What I did not like about it, how I just feel like it's just completely wrapped all over Roddenberry's Star Trek and really insulted its audience. Because one thing that Star Trek never did, take Kurtzman out of it, Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, it never insulted its audience. No. And although it had progressive themes in it, it wasn't hitting you over the head with it. You either got it or you didn't get it. But it didn't assume that your audience was stupid. It didn't assume that you had to tell your audience what they needed to think.
Well, it presumed the value system. It just presumed the value system, right? There's nothing, it's just like, you've got a Japanese guy and you've got this Russian guy and, and then you've got Uhura and Uhura kisses the white guy. It's just normal, right? In the 60s, that's not normal, right? And it just presumed it. And there's no lecturing or hectoring there. It just presents a world with a value system that, and goes with it without any sense of moralizing to you. These are the characters. These are the value systems in the 23rd century. And you go with it. And it was courageous to do that in the 60s.
Well, yeah, to have a Russian character and during the Cold War. I mean, you're taking a risk even with that character.
First interracial kiss on television. I mean,
that's right.
Go with it. It's just normal, right? It's just something that happens to the characters, and it's shot, and the audience is startled. But then there's no hectoring. Look at this. We have a first interracial kiss. It's just something that happens.
Right. And Star Trek also took the time to explore a topic. They didn't just, put it in there and then walk away from it and then go on offense. They explored it. And I think good storytelling that wants to tackle even the most controversial things, you have to understand both sides in order to be able to present the case. It's almost like a court case. If you only think and understand one side of the story, then you're going to look a little slanted when you try to tell that story. So good storytelling, and Star Trek did this so well, tried to explore multiple angles, and you would have characters, all good guys, take different sides of arguments. I remember recently watching Star Trek VI, which came out in
the Undiscovered Country.
Undiscovered Country.
Oh, I love that one.
Yes, it came out right after this.
Very deep. Yeah.
Yeah. It emulated real life, something that it's often levied as a criticism of woke stuff, that it's too much like the real world. I would say not necessarily, unless you understand both sides and are willing to explore both sides. If you're only going to present one side, then you're not doing a good job. Star Trek VI, you had Kirk on kind of the wrong side of history, right? Kirk was presented almost as kind of xenophobic, anti-Klingon, and then you had Spock, another good character, who didn't demonize Kirk. They were clashing, and they had to deal with it on screen, and you had to see characters grow, and you had to understand. And the show itself actually presented both sides as having some merit in the thinking, even if we disagreed with it. That there was
Kirk is a product of a Cold War. Kirk is a product of a Cold War. He's a Cold Warrior of his time, right? So of course his mindset is just like, many of us criticize the boomers for their politics, but their politics are the result of their experiences at that time period and what the media told them, right? And you can't expect people to let go of decades of a life journey that shaped their worldview.
Right. And Star Trek, what I'm saying is, like, Star Trek attempted to present both sides, even if they leaned one way or said, we think this is the side. They at least made the effort to portray the other side as human beings that might be misguided or might have a wrong way of thinking or might just be in a different stage of growth. But they tried to explore those things. And I feel like modern Star Trek is like, we have the answer. We're right. And then they extend the we're right, you're wrong into outside the show and mirror that same dichotomy when they're talking about fans who support it and don't support the show.
And to be fair, I think that process actually began with Brandon Braga and Rick Berman in the Next Generation. I think the Next Generation there were great moments in Next Generation, but there was a lot of heavy-handed Hollywood moralizing, especially against religion, which was not in the first show. Roddenberry was actually very interested in religion. The original show had like episodes about Jesus Christ, right? They did space, right? And
right.
and brought in Braga and Berman were atheists, and they pushed that narrative. So I think, and then my boss Ira Stephen Bear pulled that back to traditional Star Trek with Deep Space Nine, right?
Deep Space Nine is great.
Yeah,
religious, morally complex, the Dominion, all. I mean, he went back to what Roddenberry wanted to do, and so that's always been there within Star Trek. Unfortunately, under the current regime, it's been a lot of this crap. Although I understand, at least one of the shows, I haven't watched any of the stuff, but I understand one of the shows, I think Brave New World, people tended to like, right? So there were ways to break that. Picard's the final season, people like.
Yeah, that was
really good.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was waiting for that whole show. I did not like the first season.
Picard season 3 was, I thought
season,
it was excellent.
That was the ending to Next Gen that we should have gotten, and we did not get. And it was told so well. I know some people are like, oh, well, it's warmed over, member berries. I don't care.
It definitely had the member berries.
I absolutely enjoyed it because they didn't tell us everything up front, and they put the clues out there, and they took risks with it, and we went with it. Because as Picard would say, humans love a mystery. You can't leave anything that seems out of joint. And things just didn't add up from the beginning. We're just like, okay, I got to keep watching. Even the title sequence had Easter eggs and stuff in it that changed every single episode. And if you watch Star Trek, you put those together, you're like, okay, what is that going to be? What's that going to be? So that was the cool thing about season 3. It did not insult its audience. It gave us the ending that most of us wanted. Most of us wanted to have. And even Picard sucked all 3. Come on, no, I'm gonna vehemently disagree with you on this one. No,
season 3.
That was not Kurtzman. That was not Kurtzman.
No, that was my co-worker from Nikita. He ran that show, and he was.
Yeah, in fact, from what I understand, Kurtzman was kind of not paying attention when.
No.
Yeah.
That went way under. That came out of left field, which I'm glad it did, because he could just go in there and work on it. And season 3 was freaking awesome. I will die on that freaking hill.
100%. I totally got your back.
The Star Trek. Even inside of Hollywood system of writers, there are still true Star Trek fans who get it, right? Who get it intuitively, and they kept trying to assert themselves. That they had more success in it than they were able to do at Lucasfilm, where she just kept knocking those people aside, and Favreau would try to bring them, and she'd get knocked them aside, right? And so it was hard. Whereas I think that there were ways people could get around the system, even under Kurtzman, and which gives hope for the future of Star Trek. Now that we're at this place, we want to talk about this article here. That we have a cancellation, and we've got a grumbling actor. What a shock!
Well, and so one of the most easy flags of wokeness, real wokeness, is weaponization, and the headline right there. They're already weaponizing the show against certain groups of people. So weaponization, and this is why, and I'll get into this later, but there's a real big difference between liberalism and Marxism, or what Cameron would call Maoism. There's a big difference. They're really not even that compatible. And what you're getting is Marxism or neo-Marxism, whatever you want to call it, Marxist coded story in the guise of liberalism. They're just using this stuff to weaponize these shows or different identity groups. That's all they're doing. And this headline sets the tone right there.
Yeah, it 100% does. And this is what got my attention. Not only because this character shouldn't even freaking
your student is prepared, so
it should not work in the Star Trek universe, because she says she's a Jem'Hadar and Klingon.
Wait,
no,
wait, so is she like a hybrid?
Yes, but
They're genetically
Jem'Hadar was created in a lab.
Yeah.
No. No. Jem'Hadar could not reproduce whatsoever. So we're just like, okay, you already made one mistake. Because I'm like, why was that aggravating me so darn much? And then that's when people told me, they're like, yeah, Jem'Hadar's created in a lab. They can't reproduce. She should not even exist. But anyway, we'll go through this really quick so I can let Doug go off on what he does best. So, of course, it's going to end with the second season. I think that's 2 seasons too much. But shortly after the announcement, series star Gina Yashere, Laura Thach, shared a video from Instagram revealing her thoughts on the situation. She feels gutted by the news, but at the same time, she's very grateful for being part of Starfleet Academy's 2 seasons. Okay, so far so good. She went on to share her hopes that Star Trek will be back one day when the world is ready to take in the message that Starfleet Academy sought to deliver.
I always hate that phrasing. Have you ever had a friend that's like that? That's like, oh, you're just not ready for this. And it's like, that's not it. You're just hiding behind this like superior facade that you get it and I don't. And you're being very dismissive of people that don't get it like you. I hate that argument.
To be fair, I've used that against stupid people in Hollywood because they are people that actually are not ready for it. To be fair, literally in many of my conversations, it's people who literally don't have information, don't want information, right? And so you try to present them actual factual information, and they literally don't want it because it's going down that Maoist program we'll talk about, right? But again, the funny thing is that those are often the people that will reverse that language back on you, right? When they themselves can't. It's like the people that say read a book. I'm like, yes, yeah, I've read many books. That's why I came to these opinions. It's like read a book. I mean, okay,
yeah. It is a coping mechanism for some people when they take that approach of like, I get it, you don't, and I'm cool with that. It's like, oh, okay, thanks, thanks for your generosity there.
Tell you, it's just like, yeah, we heard the message and didn't like it and roundly rejected the message.
Well, and it's also presumptuous about what it is that people don't like about the show.
Yes, very much. Again, back to the whole thing of, and I'm sorry, I keep scrolling, let you guys notice. It all goes back to the fact that Star Trek, as we know it, as we know Star Trek to be, did not insult its audience. And you didn't have the actors out there insulting the audience like Robert Picardo, like Gina Yashere, all of them. Like, you don't like Starfleet Academy? Well, there's something wrong with you, and you're not ready for diversity, and you're not ready for this. It's just like, no, we're not ready to watch this abomination of Star Trek. Star Trek was always diverse. We knew that. We came for good storytelling. To go where no one has gone before, to see new worlds and new civilizations, and try not to sleep with them. Oh, that's Riker. So let's see. Down here, so of course she talks about season 2, oh, it's the best that we've ever made. But here we go. Sherry added, but hey, the haters are going to come on here and disagree, but I'm not here to fight with you right now. I just want to say it's an absolute honor and a pleasure working with the Star Trek universe. Okay, well, if you're not going to start a fight right now, why would you say that?
Yeah, you just did. You started a fight.
Again, let me get into the mindset of why a lot of people, part of it is, remember, I talk about that Hollywood is in a bubble. Like, they don't understand where culture is. They don't, remember, these actors are just reading scripts that are given to them. Everything they're saying is not meant for the general public. When they give these interviews, everything they're saying is meant for the people they expect to employ them, right? So they're presenting themselves as warriors on behalf of whatever they think that audience believes in, right? And so, it's stupid because at the end of the day, this kind of stuff smacks of bad showmanship, it smacks of, essentially resentment and, it's doesn't give the confidence that someone who simply says, yeah, I had a great time on the show, and for everyone who loved it, great. If you didn't like it, I hope we can create more stuff that you like. that's the confident response, rather than this kind of sort of resentful, the world is against it. That they don't understand that is actually not going to impress even the people that they think that they're trying to speak for, because those people can sense weakness. And in Hollywood, the one thing that nobody respects is weakness. They smell it. It's like sharks, right? If you come across it's like what that gentleman from the actor who played Finn from Star Wars. I'm blanking all these guys' names now because it's been so long, right? When he started grumbling, in a way about, he was right about the racism he experienced, but the way he did it, why has he not worked since then? Because the very people that he thought he could agitate with his Star Trek is, Star Wars is racist, which I have said, at least under the Kennedy regime, it was, the way he said it came across as whining. And so the industry shut him out. Just the same gentleman from the Superman versus Batman who played the cyborg, right? He's shut out because he came across as weak, and they don't understand that this kind of stuff is not actually achieving their objective.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I would say this would extend to most, and probably more so in Hollywood because of it's so public, and there's so much reaction to what they're doing, but. Even in smaller companies, you wouldn't want to talk like this because you're alienating people and you're complaining about bosses and stuff like these are basics.
Yeah,
these are basics. You're supposed even if you have a beef, sometimes you're like, well, is this the time to air this out? Am I going to air this out here? No, sometimes you're just like, I had a good time at the company. I learned a lot. Now it's time to move on. You don't start bashing people because people will remember that, so some of this is, I think, basic socialization, just being a social person and knowing kind of a little bit of social etiquette and, which battles to fight and which ones to kind of, let ride a little bit,
Did this particular actress, do we know her, has she worked a lot? Often it's people that don't have a lot of experience.
I don't believe she has.
Like again, I mentioned the actor John Boyega. He didn't have a lot of experience before he broke open, any more than Daisy Ridley did, right? And then and I think that lack of experience causes you to not understand that you're stepping into your own downfall with this kind of rhetoric, right? Again, with the people that you would think would support you are actually kind of like, this person's a sore loser, right?
Well, and Cameron, you probably would know this better than anybody, and I've always been curious about this. I've never really asked or had this discussion, but I have suspected that a lot of these people are being advised by publicists, agents, to do this, and they're being given bad advice, saying like, if you do this, you're in, you're in with the people that make the decisions, and it seems like it's a short-term strategy. Like you said, it seemed like it got positive headlines here, but then no one really wants to hire you.
Yeah, Douglas, but I'm not sure that PR people are giving this advice. I think they might have given this advice at when it felt like the winds were blowing in this direction, right? One of the things PR people have to do is sense where the public is. They actually have to sense it, right? And so I think so. This is the actress Gina Yashere. If we look at her IMDb credits, I'm guessing there's a lot. Are there a fair amount of credits?
No, she was in, I've never seen anything. I heard about this Bob Hart's Abishola, which was basically a sitcom. I heard a little bit, but forgot about it. But
any major productions?
No, not any major.
So Star Trek was her biggest budget
break
show.
Look, I've given this advice to actors, and they don't listen, especially young actors, or when I say young, as in less established in their career. When I worked, I'll give you an example. When I worked on Sleeper Cell, there was an actor we worked with, who was always grumbling and walking around the set and saying, literally walking around the set and saying, this script sucks, my scene sucks, when the writer of the scene is sitting there, right? And doing that in front of the crew. And so when the day came to decide which character to kill off in the scene, we're like, we're going to get rid of this guy, right? And I was present on the set the day that he got his page where he's killed off, right? And to see his reaction, he was just shocked, right? And he also had a girlfriend on the set, and he turned her from a very sweet person that we had a lot of fun working with to somebody that suddenly became like grumbling about the scenes or whatever, and her character doesn't survive. So I mean, they don't grasp this. I had on another show, I went to a friend's that TV show Quantico. right?
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
Yeah, so my friend Yasmina Masri played the twins on that show, right? And she's a brilliant Palestinian actress. We were friends. I actually went up to see her and when I went to set and hung out a bit, hung out with some of the actors. And one of the actors, I won't name which one, but we were all having dinner together. And one of the actors who had most of the actors had gotten their break on the show. It wasn't big, right? Priyanka Chopra was kind of the one who'd been, at least she had worked a lot in Bollywood, right? And and then this particular actor was grumbling, standard mantra, I hate my character, I hate the show, blah, 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 blah. I was like, I said, 6 months ago, you weren't working. I mean, 6 months ago, you had no career. Now you're on an ABC television show that millions of people are watching, right? And that person hasn't worked again, right? So now they're grumbling about not getting work. Again, this is in some ways a pathology that exists sadly amongst my actor friends, the unhappy when you don't have work, and unhappy when you do have work, and unhappy when you get fired. It's like the 3 stages of unhappiness. And it seems to be a cultural pathology in that craft.
That's interesting.
Less mature people.
Yeah. To get to this last part, and this will go right into what Doug's going to talk about. So here's her. Gosh, obviously the world is still not ready to hear the message of love, peace, infinite diversity, acceptance, the eschewing of violence and senseless wars. She continued. We're not ready to hear that message yet, and hopefully one day we will be, and Star Trek will be back stronger than ever, preferably with the same message and not completely whitewashed. What the hell is that?
So she's not making it a racial thing.
It's a racial comment.
Yeah.
A comment. I think we should ask Nichelle Nichols about that, right? I mean, about going back to races in Star Trek, which has been always on the cutting edge of talking about civil rights issues. So I don't know. But again, this is a generation that's so disconnected from the past of it. So
well, but then again, she's claiming that she understands the message of love, and the humanity is not, clearly, but she is. So, I hate when people, it's such a self-serving assessment, right? It's like, well, I'm against violence and I'm for love, and I guess other people just aren't ready for that. I mean, that's such a condescending thing. Everyone cares about love. Most people I know are morally against violence, but also understand that it happens and there's a lot of nuance to it. And it gets real tricky when you get in those trenches. When is it wrong? When is it right? When is it justified? When is it good? When is it bad? There's a lot to it. But most people, if you ask them, are going to oppose violence. Like, I'm against violence. I'm against war. So these are very easy things to pin the badge on yourself and say, I'm on this team. And the rest of you obviously aren't. I just think that that's such a simplistic and self-serving position to fence yourself off with, and then broadcast that. I don't know why you would do that.
And I agree. And again, I'm going to say, because we'll talk about this tends to have an arc of extremism, right? So this is the example of that kind of language on the left. I've seen a lot of that kind of language on the right in recent days and in recent years, where suddenly you go to some of these social media accounts of people talking about love and peace, and they're all about warmongering, right? Again, it's all very specific, love and peace to whatever I believe, right? And those outside of that are excluded from that. And that tends to be the mindset of extremists within either of these camps. Again, extremists are a circle. It all meets at the same place, right?
Well, and I'll say something on that in 1 second, but that's why you don't put that badge on yourself and say, I get non-war, I get love, because you're probably going to contradict yourself somewhere, and there's probably going to be some nuance in there somewhere. So don't drape yourself, don't crown yourself the king of love, that you get these principles and the rest of people don't, because all these principles, as easy as they seem on first pass, are actually very complex and it's very hard to be consistent as a person on all of these things all the time. It's very difficult. And then Cameron, you said extreme.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Real quick, just to follow up on what you said extremists are kind of the same on the left and right. And you know this because I'm sure you've read this too. Even communists, and when they're trying to promote people, they'll promote on the far left and far right because it's the same person. Sure. There's a similar dichotomy in the thinking of us versus them that works on the left and the right, and you don't want to really slide into either one of those extreme categories.
Yeah. Well, look, it's again, we talk about whenever I meet people that say whenever you see someone's handle on their emails, love and light, you just want to punch the person because they usually don't reflect. They don't reflect that again in their value system. You'll discover the people that have unfriended me the fastest on social media are the ones with the love and light messages, right? Because it's love and light, except within the boundary of this, right? And so that's why I don't, proclaim, like you said, I don't proclaim myself to have those things. I'm a Sufi. People often attribute Sufis are pacifists. We're not. Sufis have been some of the greatest Islamic warriors in time. You can't put yourself in these boxes of generic labels, which people do, and often I find it to be the flip of what they're saying. Like, so this actress is putting race in there out of nowhere. Like, I mean, nobody's looking at this and going, I'm not watching the show because a black actress is wearing blueface. They're not watching the show because they don't like the show. That's what's happening here.
And that's the point that people like us and I brought up. It's the fact that the show is freaking awful. There's nothing about it that makes me want to continue watching. If you want to know what the show is in a nutshell, it's okay. Your choices are either join Starfleet or jail. That is literally how this whole thing pops off, and they make it.
Is that the storyline?
Yes, that is. Yes,
essentially into Starfleet.
Pretty much, yes.
How does that fit Roddenberry's vision? I don't understand.
Not at all.
That's so not Roddenberry's vision at all. That's
not
so
even Brandon Braga's vision. What is this?
Not at it. I just, and like I said, you guys saw me crash out.
Diversity. It's like diversity
about it.
Conscription.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? I mean, again, that goes back to my use of Maoism. That's Red Guard stuff, right? You all got to be on board this thing, right? And we're gonna make sure you're on board this thing. And that's why I use the phrase Maoism, because it's such an extreme ideology. But that's where this discourse often ends up going to.
Right.
Yeah. It's just it's very disingenuous, because when you throw stuff in there about being whitewashed, okay, that tells me, one, you've never watched any original Star Trek at all. And I get a little personally offended by this, because Nichelle Nichols being in Star Trek is one of the things that made me want to become an engineer. And I read her autobiography. I got to meet her in person. I turned into a complete and total freaking fangirl when I did. And she's teaching me how to pose for pictures and stuff like that. And then one time I got like an email from her back in the day. Her son wanted to do like a charity auction, and she wanted to know if I could get something from Avery Brooks for her. First of all, I was stunned. I was like, is this the real Nichelle Nichols? Wow. And she was like, yes, it is. It is me. Everything that she went through, everything how that show was, that just brought everyone on the on the show, the stories, everything. There's nothing about it being quote unquote whitewashed. It seems like you do not like the diversity that was presented in the first place, which is, I think, is the issue. They don't like what was shown. So basically, we need to rewrite that with something different, and then make you feel like a hater because you don't want to watch this.
Well, and I love hearing that you like Nichelle Nichols and that there was a real like inspiration there. She inspired real life astronaut Mae Jemison.
Yes,
Mae Jemison she'd be like, all free. What'd she say? All frequencies open. Every time she would get on there, and that was a nod.
Yeah.
What was it?
That wasn't in the NASA script. She was going off script because they have a protocol of how they talk, and she was going off script, and they let her.
Yeah. So I mean, that counts. That's a real touchdown scored by Star Trek, and so I doubt this show is going to score a touchdown anywhere near that in real life.
Well, I mean, it's finished. It's finished, and it will be forgotten, like much of the recent Star Trek material is. I think with all the events that are happening with Paramount, I think we're going to Star Trek's going to be dormant for a while, which is probably what it needs. I think Paramount, the Ellisons need to shake out whatever political drama they're in before Yeah, I mean, I don't even know who the hell's going to own Paramount in 5 years. I don't know. I don't think it'll be the Ellisons, right? But whatever. So that's I think Star Trek needs to stay far away from all of this and then give it a time to breathe, because there are people in this town that love it, right? Like I said, there are people in this town that love it, that were shaped by it, and and they will come back to it once a lot of these characters have gone off into the sunset.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to a great point, Doug. So you have, I call it the cost of woke, but I forget exactly what you called it, but pretty much it's just because and we had this discussion before, and I know Kamran and I have had this discussion before. People tend to throw this term woke around like a pejorative. Right.
Yeah.
And it's really disingenuous a lot of times, and it's not warranted. You have some people who say, woke is, I want to impose whatever it is that I want to impose on you. And for some people, woke is, we don't want to see diverse characters at all, even though we say that we're okay with it and the story is okay with it. Okay, case in point, Sinners. How many people have we heard in our orbit complain, oh, Black people need to make their own stories, original characters, blah, blah, blah. Sinners comes out, and they try to say it's overrated. It's this, the way
they were using a script. That overrated script, it was literally the same word, right? So I was like, none of you watch this movie, or you watch this movie coming in with a desire to critique it, right?
That was it. It was just for the clicks. You didn't go see it to understand what it was. You went to go see it, so you could pretty much trash it for the most part. Yeah. And this so-called overrated film that had original Black characters and a really, really amazing storyline, and very, very much like the Jim Crow South my grandfather grew up in Mississippi, same area, Mississippi Delta, okay, won a whole bunch of Oscars.
And it should have won more, in my opinion. It actually,
I knew it wouldn't, because Hollywood, this year was Hollywood goes in cycles at the Oscars. This was the year of them, reasserting their authority, so they, and then maybe next year they'll pull back. But this was the year of them telling Coogler to go back to. I mean, they were doing that at the beginning when the movie came out. New York Times was like, this movie's going to fail. First weekend, the New York Times said a breakdown of why this movie's going to fail. It's like, dude, it just came out. And then it gets stronger with each week, right? So the system has been against the movie since the beginning, and they needed to control it.
Well, it's a great movie, and I remember actually being intrigued by the trailer. Before any commentary started, before there was any sides being chosen, I remember watching the trailer and looking at my wife, being like, "Oh, that's new. That's something different." And when I saw it, I loved it. And I thought it was great, and I was actually shocked and a little dismayed that there was such a controversy about it, because I was like, here we go. Here's a great show. It's got a Black director. It's got all these things, all the check boxes that people should like if they're into the check boxes. And then it's got the good storytelling if you're into good storytelling. So this is something that should have been easy, right? This one should have been easy. And somehow it wasn't. And that kind of irked me.
I had it on my Patreon. I had a Patreon. When I was talking about the movie, I had, someone come out of the Patreon of the comments and just say Ryan Coogler is a racist. And I was like, well, let me hear why. I said, I've seen his movies. He has political points. Even in Black Panther, he has interesting political points, right? But they're not racist. They're interesting historical points. Everything he's done is historic. Guess what? Who else does that? Dave Chappelle. His comedy, his comedy is all historical. Like when you watch his comedy, it's all about this happened to a Black man in the South in the 1930s, and that's going to relate to the joke I'm telling you right now. It's all educational about history. That's what. So when I responded, this person then sent me a nasty thing. Oh, you won't. You're censoring me. You called me a racist. I'm like, dude, you're calling Coogler a racist. Defend it. And he just left the Patreon, and I blocked him. I said, go, right, because that's a stupid comment. That's a stupid comment, but that reflected what's going on there.
Well, and let's be honest, that sort of simplistic labeling is exactly what people who are against DEI get mad about. That, oh, you're a racist because you don't like the show. You're a racist. That's such a simple thing, and it's so charged to throw it out there. So to do it casually, I think, is in and of itself a mistake. So if you're adopting that, then you've adopted the tactics of the people you're so against.
And that is 100% it.
defend it. If you think you can there are people, as Chris Rock. I was watching one of Chris Rock's old specials, and he was saying, who's more racist, white people or black people, right? Remember that one, right? We hate black people too, right? I mean that's what it is. But he was making social commentary about race within the black community, right? Power struggles within different elements. So make a comment. Explain your point of view, right? Which Chris Rock explained in his very funny special, right? Why he thought black people were more racist, right? But he was making certain social points. But I'm like, if you make a comment, like this person's just making this generic comment here, whitewash or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a stupid comment. If you're going to come onto my Patreon and say Sinners is racist, you better have a thesis explaining that to me. If it's racist because the black people were heroes, I don't know about that. If it's racist because the Ku Klux Klan is the villain, I don't know what you're trying to say here, man.
That confused me. I'm like,
so that's the thing. The Ku Klux Klan is real. This really happened. These were real people. They were organized. They were persistent. They committed acts of terror. They were formed after the Civil War. So I mean, like, you can't pretend that didn't exist. So I feel like if you're trying to aspire, and again, I don't want to drape myself and say I've achieved this. If you're trying to aspire to be an American, to adopt what I would say is an American consciousness, you have to be able to be self-critical, and you have to and I think you should be suspicious of groupthink. And that doesn't mean I'm always going to succeed. We're all susceptible to it. We're human beings. It's actually like primal. When the group runs that way, you tend to run that way too. There's certain things that you have to, that are hard to resist. But I think that the problem with woke today is it's lost its meaning, right? So, and what's weird is the more I studied it, the more I found that race actually had very little to do with it, because or some people are like, I don't like politics in my movies. Oddly enough, the more I started studying, I'm like, man, there's politics in this movie. There's politics, and these are good movies. So having politics in the movie does not disqualify it or make it woke. Having a diverse cast does not make it woke. Having a gender swap does not make it woke. I have all these examples of gender swapped where they put a woman there or they have a female lead, and it worked, and it was a good show.
Starbuck on Battlestar Galactica, I mean, was the star of that show. Right?
Totally. Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, there's for every example I found that fits the woke model, I oddly found other examples where the gender swap or the race swap was not a problem and did not meet the definition of woke. So I was like, actually, and this is where I said I was shocked, it's not about gender or race like we think. It's about the weaponization of gender and race, and to some extent the LGBT thing. When it's weaponized, and I think that's what people are reacting to, the sense of accusation or an attack levied on behalf of one race or one gender, whatever, that gets to be a little difficult to tolerate. That's where I think people are getting upset.
Is people serving as the spokespeople of various human beings, right? Creating movements where they themselves, it's essentially, like I said, I believe there's only two forms of politics in the world, which is feudalism and libertarianism. You're either feudalist or a libertarian. I really believe that. A feudalist believes that they are the small aristocracy who should control wealth and knowledge for the masses of stupid people. You have people politically right and left who believe that. I would argue our country has become that, right? It's a feudalist society where you have an aristocracy. It's what George Carlin said. It's a big club and you ain't in it.
You ain't in it.
You ain't in it.
Right? And so I mean, that's Ed versus the few people that say, it's that beautiful, hilarious scene in The Life of Brian, right? Monty Python, where that poor guy, Brian, who people have mistaken for the Messiah, right? Where the crowds are at his house screaming, you are the Messiah. And he tells them, you are all stop repeating these mantras. You're all individuals. And they all scream, we are all individuals. And then there's one guy in the crowd that goes, I'm not, right? That guy is the libertarian.
He's the actual individual.
Right? And that's what woke comes down to. It's always the feudalists reasserting their right to control as a small minority of society what society thinks, does, and as a result controls their resources. That's what I think it always comes down to. Feudalists always they change they will change their mask. They're communists today. They are conservatives tomorrow. They're that's why it's like neoconservative, neoliberal. It's the same thing, right? Because it's the same people changing their masks, right? And so that's the feudalists versus people who want individual freedom. And vast majority of people are kind of okay with feudalism. That's why it works.
Well, because individual freedom is really messy, really hard, and there's a lot of failure. And so individual freedom can suck, but it's like the upside, you did it. When you score that touchdown, it really matters. It's something that you hold on to that meant something. There's a lot of substance there. So yeah, some people I don't think really do. I don't think they want that personal freedom. They want everything to be kind of told that it's going to be okay all the time. And the reality is it's not going to be okay. And sometimes you're going to make catastrophic mistakes, and that's going to suck. But that's part of the package if you're going to try to live individualistically free to the best of our extent. All of us pay our we still do things that, we pay our taxes. We don't park in the red zone. We'll follow rules,
Sorry, I'm taking an airplane.
Right. But yeah, so what's weird is I tried to figure out what it was specifically that was really troublesome about actual wokeness. And I wish almost we didn't use that term anymore, but I would say the number one thing is what I would call Marxist coding in the storytelling, that there isn't a framework in the language, worldview of the characters or the filmmakers in some cases that has an oppressor-oppressed framework. That seems to be an identifiable, recognizable thing. And the reason I don't like it is because it's low resolution. And because it is dehumanizing, ultimately. You can very quickly lump people into a group that you no longer see, and you could do anything to this group once you no longer see them as real people or anything. So, and that's dangerous, and we're all susceptible to this sort of dichotomy. So we have to be careful with it. So what I came up with is the idea of personhood, that woke films tend to view characters and what I'm calling a personhood error. The character is not complex, they're not nuanced, and they exist in a way to represent a group, and that group is being weaponized. And what I'm trying to say is you have to recognize the weaponization as the problem, not the group as the problem. So if there's a black captain or a Muslim captain or a female captain, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a ton of shows where I can prove that this is true. The problem is, are they weaponizing that? And in my opinion, I wish the actors would get upset that the showrunners in some cases or the promotional teams or the studio are using this group identity and weaponizing it. Remember what was her name? Reva in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Moses Ingram.
Yes, Moses Ingram. And she was getting mad at the fans. And I kept thinking, I was like, man, I think the people telling you the fans are evil are the ones that aren't your friends. They're using the situation and weaponizing it.
Well, again, goes back to the mindset of actors, right? Certainly of the actors that I've worked with, is that it ends up becoming this group think to each other, which is this weird negativity, right? And that is something that's beyond politics. Most actors, the reality is most actors are even as they become famous, are still not in charge. They are reading a script, literally reading a script, right? And in order to survive this industry, they will continue to read that script. And so they are not going to, the few times, actually, I'll give you an example of some time where I saw the opposite, but it was difficult. When I was working on the show Sleeper Cell, I had written a scene that was very important to me, where the character Darwin Al Saeed, our hero, the Muslim FBI agent played, Michael Ealy, was talking about the importance of Islam to what he was doing. And for various reasons, the studio network just cut the whole scene out. They just, they cut it out. And Michael was upset about it. Michael's a devout Christian, but he's like, this character needs to say this, right? And this character authentically said the episode is weaker because the character's motivation is not being explained without the scene, right? So he then went and fought. He argued with the people in charge, and the scene got reinserted, and it ended up being filmed, and ended up being one of the best scenes in the episode, right? But again, that was unusual, right? It was unusual for him to stick his neck out. Maybe because he was the lead of the show, he had a little bit more power to do it. Most actors just want to survive. They just want to survive the day and work again, even while they're grumbling that they hate the job.
Well, and there's, you know, and there's certain group dynamics there, right? You're a new actor, you're trying to get in. This would be, you know, you could probably find this in other industries too, that you try to keep a low profile. You don't want to rock the boat, you know, whatever. Or it depends on who you're listening to, you know, like, oh, this doesn't matter or that doesn't matter. And then you're out there on social media saying something crazy, and now you're in trouble, you know. So you know, keeping a low profile, there is some wisdom to that, because it's perceived as safe, right? That's a safe place to be, to keep a low profile.
And are they not wrong? I have been unsafe throughout my career. I have spoken up in writers' rooms and, you know, in general about my beliefs on things, political, religious, etc. When, again, we talked about this before we came on there. I tend to not talk about these issues until somebody crosses multiple red lines and I'm forced to say something just out of self-respect, right? And that's always used against me. You know, that's always used against me. And it hasn't helped my career. It's damaged my career. It's made me adversaries, right? So are these people wrong? I mean, is this actress, she'll continue to work. You know, I don't know that she's ever going to become a huge star because she's playing it safe, right? The one hope I have is that despite the fact that I've made a lot of enemies, I've got a few very incredibly loyal allies in this town. And maybe those allies will allow me to achieve something that the safer route wouldn't. It's just harder and longer.
Yeah. And it's right. It's hard to read the terrain on those things. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, and it sounds like you've made your call, like, at the end of the day, you're going to stick with the principle, and wherever that leads is where you're comfortable. Because, you know, you can play it safe and have regrets too. You know, you can play it safe and it goes nowhere because you played it too safe. You know, or you could take too much of a risk and it blows. So you got to find your comfort zone with what you're willing to do, and then you got to accept the results of that, the consequences.
Yeah. And, you know, and again, actors are in less of a position because, you know, at least I, as a writer, can survive. You know, I can create a new script. I can create a script under a pen name. If my reputation, you know, is destroyed, I can recreate myself under a pen name with a script and relaunch, right? You had that during the blacklist in Hollywood, right? You had Trumbo, you know, who was blacklisted. And I don't agree with Trumbo's politics. He was a communist, right? But what he did was he then reinvented himself and were all these scripts under a false name like Spartacus, right? And won Oscars and he couldn't accept because he couldn't come on stage because he was blacklisted.
That's right.
And so, you know, again, I don't agree with his politics, but I can respect his integrity in that, right? And so I, as a writer, can do that. It's harder if you're just an actor because even the biggest movie stars one day aren't big anymore. You know, like, can Dustin Hoffman fight for his, you know, the system right now? He could once when he was at the top of the game, right? And Tootsie maybe. But can he fight the system now? Everyone falls in this town, and actors have very little to resurrect them. Yes, you know, because it's about their bodies and their looks and who's cool in the moment. A writer can resurrect themselves, and so maybe I can take a little bit more risk than an actor can.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you mentioned, you know, about actors and some of the risks that they take. One, and it's been bothering me, so I'm actually going to bring this up. Like the whole thing with the Harry Potter HBO series.
Yeah.
And all of the people spurging out about the fact that Snape is Black. Okay, there's the majority of them that were just like, that's not how he's described in the books. It's like, make this make sense. There's that group, which I completely agree with.
Well, because that's coming from a place of literary authenticity. That's it.
Exactly.
Right.
It's, you know,
that's an argument, right?
Exactly.
Like
you're saying.
If Snape was Chinese or Pakistani, someone of that position would have the same critique. You know,
it's just like
if the Pal girl was suddenly made Chinese when she's Indian in the books, you know,
you say
that position would have that critique.
Yeah, it's just like, what, this doesn't make sense. But then you also have the other group, and we talked about this, who like to hide behind the guise of anti-woke or whatever, and just use it to espouse whatever bigoted racist opinion that they have, you know. the whole thing, black Snape, this, that, and that. The issue is not that Snape is black. And then you have people say, well, oh, well, he shouldn't have picked that that particular role. Who are you to tell people what to pick?
You can't blame the actors. They're trying, like Cameron said, I think those people are trying to look for their big break. They're trying to get the role. If you were in their position, you'd probably do the same thing. You're not going to turn down many roles when the opportunity comes. So I don't blame actors for taking these roles.
Who's going to turn down Snape? Nobody's going to turn down Snape. The casting choices are by the producers. You give it an offer to play Snape, you're going to take it.
Well, and you know what? There's a lot of these debates happen before the show comes out. And the reality is he might be really good at Snape, and this might be a really good representation of Harry Potter. This might be a good show. And we'll be like, remember people were complaining about him before the show came? We'll have to remember that because, like, look at Nick Fury. There's all sorts of characters, like I said, that I could point out that are race swap that were great. And now they kind of are that character. Culturally, they've kind of adopted. That is now what people think of when they think of Nick Fury. And there's no one arguing about that.
I mean, Paulie has done entire episodes where he's looked at the legacy of Latin characters that were literally whitewashed. Right?
Yeah, that was true.
Oscar movie like Argo it was actually a Latino that was the hero of Argo, and now you got Ben Affleck, an Irish dude, right, playing it, right, and nobody critiques that kind, and that's been going on for 100 years.
Vasquez and Aliens,
exactly. And she's great, but let's be honest, that's what happened. That's what happened here.
Right. So what I'm saying is, it's not so much who's being cast that is the problem. It's whether or not that's being weaponized against the public or the audience.
Exactly.
That is the problem. And the other dimension that goes along with this, and I'm calling it promotional capture. Woke shows tend to promote themselves that way, meaning you have interviews, showrunners, studios, journalists, media, social media, all saying the same thing. And this is part of the weaponization process, but it is a promotional capture. And so the show kind of finds itself in this bubble where they're attacking you and automatically assuming that the only reason to hate the show is if you're a bigot. And so they kind of package this. And woke shows, real woke shows, tend to do that. And by the way, Sinners did not do that. There was no promotional capture there. I think Sinners was kind of left on its own, and people gravitated toward it and liked it. And another way you can tell the promotional capture is that disconnect in the audience scores versus critic scores. When you get a big gap there, that's how you could kind of tell if there's been a promotional capture of a show. Like The Last Jedi, there's no way that show was like a 91%. You had a huge gap there. So that's one metric. By the way.
I almost always just trust the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, because the gap is off. It's usually two ways. It's either like The Last Jedi, where it's 100% positive and 20% positive amongst the fans, which is accurate, and then you get other stuff where it's like, this thing is garbage. The critics are garbage. It's like 97% positive amongst the fans, and that's always a banger. That's always a great thing that you want to go watch. Right, that's always because there's something that offends the snooty critics. But I'm like, well, the people are loving it, so I don't know, man. So
what I'm saying is, like, let's say there's a black actor being cast as Snape. Don't get mad at the actor. Don't get mad at the casting. Get mad at headlines calling you a bigot if you don't like it. Otherwise, hang tight. See if it's a good show. But if they start running headlines, or if they're attacking you on social, then get mad at those people. That's I think the best policy against that. Get mad at the weaponization process. Don't get mad at the casting choice. Don't get mad at the actor. And Cameron's Patreon has a good rule. Don't say it's bad until you've seen the show.
Yeah,
if you've seen the show, go ahead, Cameron. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I mean that gentleman who left my Patreon after saying Sinners was racist. I asked him, well, explain. And he couldn't because he hadn't seen it. He hadn't seen it. So I was like, okay then. So why should I listen to you?
And by the way, Sinners, I created a scoring system based on the framework.
Doug, it's not to interrupt you, but did you want to show your scoring system?
Yeah, let's start moving that part of the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can.
Can you screen share it? Can you make him like co-host or something to screen share?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that here.
You can just pop it up, and I'll click the screen to share it.
Okay, let me see if I could share my screen here. Share screen. Window.
I'll see it pop up, and then I'll put it on.
See if this works. Now this doesn't show the scores yet because that would almost be too small. Can you see that? And I could zoom in.
Hold on. I have to remove my stuff first.
Let me see if I can zoom in.
StreamYard isn't that smart.
So this is kind of the way I've
This is the AI that you've been using? Okay.
Well, I've been using it because it keeps track of all the stuff I'm thinking, and I can be like, are there examples of shows that have, and there are these examples, and so this is why I'm trying to make the case emphatically, and I'll stand by it. It's not about race. It's not about gender. It's about the weaponization of race and gender. Two very different things. And I think that that's important because people who are getting mad at a black actor or an Asian actor or any, you're technically, there might be a case there, but there should also be some other signs. And I'm making the case that you should focus on those other signs primarily because that's the safer bet on where the real problem is. So here I have the what I'm calling a personhood error. And that's the idea that there's a group membership factor to the character, which is more important than the individual character, the agency of the character themselves. They seem to exist to represent a group rather than actually be a standalone character. Personhood.
So
character
including the story as well as the public relations aspect of it. Is that how because you could have something that is the story itself is not that, but the PR people decide to push it that way.
So there's two separate parts. The personhood error is what I'm thinking about in character specifically.
So it's within the writing itself. It's within the writing
within the writing for number one. Number 6 is what you're talking about. The promotional capture where the oppressor-oppressed framework is in the film, and the character exhibits this through their group membership rather than their individuality. And then this expands outside the film or show to the showrunners, actors, studio heads, journalists, and media who treat the public in the same dichotomy. You're either the oppressor group or you're the oppressed group. And if you're in the oppressed group, you're the victim. If you're in the oppressor group, you're a bigot. And we're going to call you that. And we're going to hammer this home. And then when you turn on the show, it's nice and neat for you in the show, and the characters exhibit the same issue.
Doug, I just want to bring up something interesting because you talked about that, the group membership versus individual.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why I hope my prediction wasn't going to come true for the Oscars, but it did. One battle after another, one Best Picture. Sinners won original screenplay.
Yeah.
And that's why, because in one battle after another, there's the oppressed group, the whole combination of black people, and there's the oppressor,
black daughter of the white hero. Yes,
exactly. I didn't even watch the end of that movie because I guessed what it was, and I said I can't bring myself to see the end of it because it was just so disgusting. But that, if you want a prime example of that personhood error, one battle after another is definitely
right, and that's what I mean when I say dehumanizing. Because the personhood, Kamran is a complex individual. I'm a complex individual. Lorraine is a complex individual. If you just narrow me down to white man or Pakistani man or black woman, you are looking at the world in a very low resolution way, and you're probably missing the personhood factor underneath the complexity of these people. And I think that's why I'm calling it an error. Because you're going into a low resolution version of reality, and you're going to start dehumanizing people if you do that, and that's a problem. And we're all susceptible to doing it, unfortunately. So you have to be guarded against this, and that's why I think it's important to define what is woke and what isn't. Because if you're calling everything woke, you're also making a personhood error. You might be overlooking a very nuanced character, like Michael B. Jordan's character in those are awesome characters, by the way. You're making that error. There's a real person there. There's a real character there with nuance and complexity. So, and then to be brief, because I know that there's we do have time limits, but The kinship violation is this idea that, like, Cameron, you might be Muslim, Pakistani, you might have all these identity, the spectrum of identities that you have, and I have a different spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we love movies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that will bring me and Cameron and also me and Lorena together. We're on this stream together and everyone in the chat room together, because it doesn't matter what those identities are. We share kinship in something, and really good stories honor that. When you watch Dances with Wolves and they do the trade at the end, he goes, and he's like, Tamani Tatankato, and he's yelling that, you have always been my friend. Kinship. There's something that these two people shared together despite these tribal identities that would normally keep them apart. So a kinship violation is where you don't allow that. Meaning, if you're part of this group, you know, if you're a Republican, you're out. If you're a Democrat, you're out. You know, if you do that, then you're violate. There's a kinship violation. You're not allowing a universal commonality to exist beyond those identities.
Sure. It's interesting. There was, if you search for this on YouTube, there's a great video somewhere on YouTube of a newscast that was done when Return of the Jedi premiered in I think it was 83, right? When Return of the Jedi premiered, and they just went down to the streets of the cities and asked people who were queuing around the line to see Return of the Jedi, and and what was fascinating about it, this is like 83. And it was all multi-race people who had gathered together to see. There was some black kid from the hood with his white friend, and they were waving our Darth Vader and the Emperor and how much they loved the green lightsaber. And there was no issue. There was an inherently diverse group of people in that line that they were interviewing, and they were all just fanatical about Return of the Jedi, right? And it filled my heart with such joy, because that's the first movie I saw in the theater, so I understand, right? It's the first Star Wars movie. Actually, I saw the others on videotape, right? But but I got that. But again, this is the kind of thing that we saw in the forever damaging Last Jedi, where you had, it became, it was kinship violations throughout that thing, right? It was basically, you were either with Rey, superpowered Rey, or you were part of this, like, bizarro fascist thing that made no sense, right? It was this weird. Right. Even the movie had all these things that logically didn't make sense, but they were, these tribes, like that whole, when they went to the the stupid planet for, the gambling planet, and the
Canto Bite. Oh,
yeah,
I don't even know.
They were trying to save the horses instead, right? It was like the kinship was, you're either all stupid people or smart people, right? And it was just like different tribes of stupid people.
Right. Well, and kinship, let's be honest, storytelling elevates kinship. In fact, some of our greatest moments in storytelling is when two characters find that kinship in something that supersedes a previous tribal allegiance or identity there. So when you go back to honoring tribalism, you're actually going against one of the tenets of really great storytelling, which is a universality that we all like. So, like you were saying, Return of the Jedi, there's kinship around that franchise, right? Yeah. It didn't matter. It's multiracial, it's multi-gendered, it's all sorts of things.
Yeah, and even within the movie, there was kinship. I mean, you've got Lando blowing up the Death Star, right? I mean, he's the hero.
Yeah, people forget Lando blew up this. He was the Luke Skywalker of the second Death Star.
Yeah. So
that's one of my favorite moments, by the way, in the whole trilogy. Lando coming like yeehawing out of that exhaust port.
Speaking of kinship, do you guys remember the Next Gen episode called Darmok?
What was that about? What was the concept? I don't know the title.
This was when Picard and this other alien were on this planet with some kind of monster that was trapped.
Oh, they were like adversarial aliens, but they had to work together.
Yeah, they had to work together.
One of the best, like, Roddenberry style episodes.
That one, that is a prime example of of kinship.
And I would say Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek honored the kinship element of storytelling above all else. I mean, that was one of his guiding principles. And I feel like modern Star Trek has kind of violated that and said, like, we're, it's about our group running these spaceships, and you're the out group and we're the in group. And I'm like, man, I don't think that's what Roddenberry really had in mind at all.
He didn't. I mean, if you remember the original Roddenberry, there was an episode where Kirk and the Klingons have to join together against this, like, entity that fed off of hate. And then they had to basically laugh at it together. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
The Klingons, they all had to laugh at it, and it lost all of its power.
Yeah. So yeah, personhood, which is the complex individual human being who is multidimensional and has multiple identities and wants the right to follow their way. And characters should exhibit this. And I think human beings, we do exhibit this. That's why good characters are good, because we recognize that sort of multidimensional quality to the character. Skipping down to the authenticity breach, this is one too I've noticed. Authenticity is a good quality to have. And what's interesting is I'm noticing more and more this word is being thrown around, like it's on YouTube and social media. Authenticity is becoming a new capital, that the more authentic you are, the more interesting you are. And so I've noticed that one problem with movies that seem to violate or seem to be bad woke, they break the authenticity. You know, the craft becomes secondary to the message, and also lore becomes secondary. There's all sorts of lore. They break the lore all the time, and there's a lot of mistakes made there. Lore breaking by itself doesn't mean it's woke, because, you know, I remember watching as a kid. I remember Obi-Wan telling Luke, you know, your father was a great star pilot. And he's like, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. I was like, I don't know if that works. But ultimately, it didn't matter.
Let's look at it for the example. For example, I don't think The Force Awakens is particularly woke using these things.
Not. It did not rate.
But it had authenticity problems. There's a lot of, I mean, JJ didn't care enough to understand how light speed worked, right? That there's a reason that you can't go into light speed around a planet because of the gravitational pull. So the idea of having the Falcon just light speed into that planet to get around the security, because if you could just do that, why didn't you just do that in Return of the Jedi? Why did you have to steal the security codes to get through the shield, right? If you could just light speed through it, right? But he didn't care. It wasn't particularly woke. He was just badly written, right? Because of lack of authenticity.
Well, right. So right. That's one dimension that show failed, but it did not necessarily fail on all these levels. And honestly, the scoring did not put The Force Awakens. It did not even rate it as woke, but The Last Jedi, it did. It had these other messages in there. Yes. We already talked about the weaponization, structural. This one I haven't worked out as much yet. I haven't like individually examined it, but it's the idea of earned resolution through the character. And Cameron, you know this, that there is, you know, characters can grow and they go from the arc, from the beginning to the end, and they change through the course of the story. And there's an organic change that takes place versus a shift, a character shift, where suddenly they're like, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm different now. The Acolyte was awful at this. The character would just change positions, and there was no storytelling that led to those changes. They just changed positions versus
it's also the Mary Sue phenomenon, right?
Right.
It's Rey, Super Rey in The Last Jedi. And again, the problem isn't Rey in the Force Awakens. She isn't really, you know, there's the hope that her character can develop. It just doesn't in the next movie, right? In the next
movie, actually potential there, yeah.
There was, again, the first movie, he just set it all up, said, "See y'all later, suckers. You solve this, right?" And the next guy goes, "You know, screw you. I ain't gonna solve nothing. I'm gonna do Doug's 8-point plan here."
Well, but the idea, grow, you have to understand things about being a person to be able to write about growth. And that's not so easy, by the way. Cameron, I know you can vouch for that. It's actually not easy to write characters that grow unless you really understand the growth mechanisms that hopefully you've experienced yourself.
You just hit the pivotal issue. A lot of these people, I would suggest, that are writing this kind of tripe have not grown as human beings. Right? They haven't grown. Personally, they haven't gone. They're stuck in an echo chamber like Miss Kennedy and Mr. Johnson. They're stuck in an echo chamber and they haven't grown. And you can see, but when they were given the mirror of the fans critiquing them, they didn't grow in response to that. Right.
Well, and you know, when I would love to talk about this sometime in depth, but I did an examination of the greats in A New Hope, George Lucas and Ben Burton, all those guys that were involved in that. And you know, there were George Lucas almost died. He crashed his car going too fast. You know, there's real personal tragedy. Some of the parents are Holocaust survivors. J.R.R. Tolkien came back from World War I. Some of these guys served in World War II. There's real big things in their past that fed into their growth mechanism when they write. And then you look at, and I hate to say this, but like Kathleen Kennedy, what is she bringing into that background into Star Wars? And it seems like more of a corporate lifestyle. And it's hard. I don't know if you could pull the same thing out of a corporate lifestyle as you can from a near-death experience or experience actually serving in a war. So I think those heavy-hitting background issues help with storytelling. You know, some sort of something that's tough in your lifestyle that helps you become a great writer. So, or storyteller, or craftsman, or craftswoman. But that's structural change, the ability to capture that. Promotional capture. This was a big one. This was a differentiator for me in a lot of films. That bubble we talked about, where the film is promoted based on identity group issues, and you're either in or you're out. You're either the oppressed victim group, or you're the oppressor bigoted group. And the studios ran with this in some cases. I think Lord of the Rings, or I'm sorry, Rings of Power was one of the worst offenders. They went like all in on that stuff, and that ranked in the top 5 in woke shows in terms of scoring. I have noticed that a lot of these shows do have an anti-Western mentality. That in and of itself is not make it woke, because self-criticism is a Western value. I think, we do have show like Dances with Wolves that criticize Western. That's not a woke show. But a lot of shows that have it also have this anti-Western dimension to it. And again, the issue is the weaponization of that. You know, how hard are they leaning into it, and how hard are they making their case there?
Because the thing is this: if we look at just at the United States, right? Because I'm more comfortable talking about that than other countries have their own history, of cultural growth. But the United States has always been born on a dichotomy. It was born on a dichotomy. It was born on a dichotomy of people that were courageous, people seeking religious freedom who came here and then wiped out the natives. Right? I mean, that's a dichotomy, right? I mean, so you've got people with a certain value system that came here, seeking freedom and the expanse of a new continent that took out the native and enslaved a bunch of other people, right? And so, and that's the inherent contradiction within the internal structure of the United States value system, right? Lorena knows, it's within the Constitution, the 3/5 law, right? I mean, it's there, right? I mean, and so it's the inherent contradiction of having Thomas Jefferson talk about, the Bill of Rights while owning and impregnating slaves, right? That's the inherent contradiction of the United States. That's a historical reality. We fought a civil war over it, and we're still fighting all kinds of cultural wars over it. So that is why the United States actually has within its own heritage the critique, right? The critique. The people like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey were able to tap into American history to make a critique of where America was, right?
Well, and that's
not woke. That's within the tradition.
And you should be able to have this dimension to yourself where you can be critical of even the country you love, the people you love. Being critical is not in and of itself a woke thing. It's actually a Western tradition. It's probably a tradition in Islam. There's got to be a self-critiquing or a critique mechanism in cultures. And so the critique itself is not the problem. But I have noticed that a lot of the woke shows do take a strong anti-Western position. And then, number 4, weaponized it pretty hard. So it's the weaponization process that I think that I'm the most reactive to. And then cultural extension. Oh, go ahead, Cameron.
I just want to just stay on this for one more point, which is the idea of cultural Marxism, right? I mean, cultural Marxism always does the critique from a Marxian, analysis, right? Rather than an authentic cultural analysis, right? And that's why it feels hectoring. It feels self-righteous. It feels like you're being given a complicated formula to critique something that you can already critique within yourself without it, right? And so that's why it feels alien, right? And you can sense it in the storytelling, right? When you watch Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, right? He's just continuing the legacy of the light side of the force of American history, right? If the light side of the force of American history can win out, we could in 300 years develop the world of the Enterprise, right? But he's coming out of that heritage. And if remember there was that episode where Kirk met like Lincoln, remember that episode? Where like all those people, the Gord episode, all those
my God, totally.
There was Lincoln and there was like, General Greene, who was like part of World War III, they were all thrown in there. And that was showing the complexity of just Earth history, right? That led to the world of the Federation. And so it's, that's authentic critique. It was done on the show. But then when you have somebody who's using this critique that comes out of an ideology, you immediately sense it's not authentic.
Right. And it's a combination of these things. And I would say these things, when you put them together, is what I would call Marxist coding. Marxist coded stories. And I don't like that because again, I try to be open-minded. You know, communism is a thing. It came out. A lot of people got behind this idea. You know, a lot of people are attracted to this idea. So for me, it's like, well, what is it? What is the idea of equality, that we're all the same and all, you know, there's real appeal there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when I watch it in expression, I'm like, at the end of the day, it becomes very dehumanizing. And so I'm against it because at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is to elevate the human experience and the human individual. And these are the principles that seem to violate that the most. And I think that is what woke is. And when I score it, you can see it. By the way, Sinners did not come up woke. That's what I'm saying. It's not about the casting. It's not about whether they're black or white. That has nothing to do with what is woke and what isn't. So the best thing to do is not to freak out if there's a black actor or an Indian person being. The wrong thing to do is to react to that. React to a headline that jumps in front of that and weaponizes that and makes that an issue. That you can attack the headline or that journalist if you don't like that headline. But wait to see if it's good. One of my favorite Star Treks, The Wrath of Khan. Ricardo Montalban is a Hispanic individual playing an Indian. Khan is an Indian. He's an Indian warrior. Right. But would I want him not to be cast? He did a great job. So a lot of times you got to give the show a chance. I have adopted Cameron's rule not to comment officially until you've seen it. If you want to react to some of the media things, I can understand that. But, you know, give the show, give the actor, give the writers a chance. You might be surprised. Yeah. And by the way, so one of the worst offenders was, I'll read some of the top ones. The Acolyte was one of the worst offenders in the woke rating. Doctor Who, modern era Doctor Who from 2018 to 2024. She-Hulk, Starfleet Academy, which we just discussed. Star Trek Discovery was on there. Rings of Power, Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh, Lord.
Right. But again, you instinctively understand all of these 8 points are failing there, right? So, yeah.
Right. So the Watchmen show failed on this scale, but the Watchmen movie did not. So again, you're in the same franchise.
But that, you see, that's Damon Lindelof again doing the I'm not racist. Look how non-racist I am by doing this. You know, it's like you know, Damon. Yes, people should know about the black town that was wiped out. You know, people should know about it, but you ain't telling that from an authentic point of view. You're telling that to make some, you know, thing about how you as the white savior have to tell the black people's story, right?
And that's the crux of the whole issue, which is so aggravating. It's like rather than it's like if you're going to tell it all, you know, without bias. You put it out there for people to make up their own opinions. I don't need you to tell me and put your own agenda in it, put your own spin on something like that. That's a historical, you know, that's a
like the movie. Well, the movie Glory. I scored that. It came up at like the bottom.
Oh,
there's
Glory
a movie that is totally awesome. Tackling racism, has all sorts of issues in there, and it's a great film. It did not violate. It had personhood. All those characters were complex, every single one of them. It had kinship, characters connected on certain issues, whether they were from one tribe or the other, whether they were black or white, and they did not remove some of the tribalism. I remember the scene where you have the white army passing the black army, and they're starting to make comments and race, and there's like a soldiers fight. You know, so they didn't leave it out. They put it in there. Not woke. Glory is not woke. So you can, like that, you talk about the town that was bombed in Oklahoma. You can tell that story. Just by telling that story doesn't mean you're telling a woke story. You're telling a piece of history. Is the Watchmen the place to tell that story? Probably not. Is Lindelof, is this the guy that should be tackling this? Probably not.
And that's why it feels tacked in. It feels tacked in, right? It feels tacked in because I got to prove that I voted for Obama twice. I got to prove it. That's all of my characters in Hollywood. All of these guys. I got to prove it. You know, it Get Out. That was one of you know, I'm not a fan of a lot of his stuff, but Get Out is a very good movie.
That was a very good movie. I didn't want to watch it.
I met all
Kamran
the people
told me. He said, you said, Lorraine, you got to watch it. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll watch it. And I did. And I'm like, wow. The twist on that. And I'm sorry, Jordan Peele has not He has not done better than that movie since.
That's his one great movie, right? He's Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that movie did not score as woke. What else? Skeleton Crew did not score as woke. That came out right after The Acolyte. So it's really interesting that you have one group and another group making these shows back to back, and one breaks all these rules and the other one does not. So like Everything Everywhere All at Once, that's not a white show. That has nothing to do with white people. Not woke. It's a great show. Yeah, The Last Jedi was up there. The Marvels is up there as woke. Willow, the show. Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny scored higher. Picard season 1 scored high. Picard season 3 scored super low. So again, we're within the same franchise. So there's something happening between these shows, and what I'm trying to do, the best of, and I'm not saying I'm solved it, but these are the distinguishing factors as best as I could tell. It's probably an incomplete list. There's probably more. I could probably add religion, anti-religion to this list that I did not get into.
But actually,
Guy Ritchie's
movie. You mentioned the Marvel's movie. I bet you if you ran the Ms. Marvel TV show, which was a wonderful show, it would not come up as woke. It would not come up as woke.
I agree.
Yeah.
Let me run it.
Right. And, and look, even like their content, the anti-Western, some people say, it's a Pakistani woman, blah, 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 blah. There is a great scene in there where you have this sort of bigoted Homeland Security person walking into a mosque, and being rude. And then someone in the imam quotes Thomas Jefferson to them about how their behavior wasn't right. Right. And that's in the show. Right. Let's see what the analysis would do.
It's going to take us. This thing crunches some numbers. It's actually pretty cool to. So it's good. I'll tell you in 1 second what it comes up as. Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
What's that?
Oh, I was just going to say, I know for me personally, I was like, I don't think I'm the age demographic for it. But when I was watching it, I'm just like, this family is freaking, awesome. Even the mother was just like, what are you doing at these conventions? Who's going to be there? I'm like, oh my God, my mom said the same stuff like that.
My mom said the same thing when I'm going to Doctor Who conventions. I felt like I was watched. By the way, I watched that show with my mom. I watched Ms. Marvel with my mom. I haven't watched a show with my mom since I was a little kid.
So it scores very low, Cameron.
Yeah. It was just a fun.
Mostly clean. Probably the cleanest of the DC. This is what I said to people. This is the least woke show on Disney MCU, and that's what this thing is saying.
Yep.
Listen, I'll just read what it says because it's interesting. The story itself is mostly clean, probably the cleanest of the Disney Plus MCU shows. The promotional and cultural apparatus pulled it into trace. So that's where it scored poorly. The Disney promotional team is where this had a problem. That's what I'm saying.
I said to people. I said, don't watch this advertising, the marketing. The show is for you, or at least you'll enjoy it, right? That was the example I gave of marketing making something not what it was.
So folks, follow the rule that we're coming up with. Don't complain about the identity group of the people in it, because then you're just as bad as the people on the other side. Complain about the marketing who are pushing this weaponization process. What this is saying is that the promotional did not match the show. The promotion they tried to promote it and weaponize it, but the show itself was clean. This is a similar dynamic to Lightyear. The content was less or isn't the problem, but the ecosystem around it weaponizes the show and handles it with relative grace. The interesting comparison is with Sinners. Both are identity-rich stories about belonging. Sinners was promoted on craft, and Coogler never sorted his audience.
Nope.
Ms. Marvel's content deserves something close to Sinners' score. The apparatus is what gave it. It says inflates it, which means added to the score. And then I'll add it to the spreadsheet.
That's the apparatus. That's the Disney marketing team with its sort of, its colonial mindset. Well, we got to present it for these brown people this way, when that's not the show's message.
That's where I want to focus on weaponization. That's why I'm trying to implore, focus on the weaponization, which is where the real angst is coming from, not necessarily the race and gender of the actors or actresses portraying these roles. Whether or not they're gender swapped or not. Like I said, there's a million examples of female gender swaps, of different racial swaps, of examples. We talked white actors playing different races playing white actors, Hispanics playing Indians. There's all sorts of examples of these, and there's a lot of examples where they work. So don't get hung up on that. get hung up on the weaponization because that's where the tribalism is really being generated. So anyway, you're right, Cameron. Ms. Marvel, I should have looked at that one. I can't believe I forgot it.
Yeah,
but
I'm glad we did it live because people could see how the process
Yeah.
works. We could see the analysis here, and then it's and
Awesome.
you can, it came to the actual conclusion I have is the marketing is misrepresenting the show, and it's going. People go, our show's not made for me. It's for anti-imperialist brown people, college revolutionary types. I'm like, dude, it's a family show that I watch with my mom, right? I mean, and it made us laugh at how silly Pakistani, joyful Pakistani culture is, and how universal it is, how utterly universal it is, right?
That's kinship. The kinship principle. I should be able to watch a story about Pakistani family and relate to it. There should not be a major hang up there. And good storytelling will do that.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
This is a wonderful, I hope you keep this. Maybe we could use this as future projects come out. I personally think we're going to be evolving away from this. I've been saying it for a long time, on my Patreon, that we're evolving away from the woke world because it doesn't make money. It just takes time because all this garbage, like this Star Trek show, whatever, they were all put in the pipeline years ago. They had to flush through the system. The very fact that Paramount Plus pulled the plug on it, says something that they're not going to, that this isn't working. And I think, I think we'll see less of this, but this is a very useful framework to have in case we have this debate about a future project. Something comes up, and we can say, how does the analysis work?
Right. Well, because it's important to me to get it right. And I'm not saying I do. I'm not saying I always get it right. It's just important to me to try. And my big thing is I do see the complaint that everyone that this is becoming a new big thing where people are calling everything woke. There's such a backlash to it that there's a knee-jerk reaction. I'm like, well, now we're getting into a territory where we're misrepresenting good stories as woke when they're not. So it's becoming important to me just from a writing. I value writing and good writing. I want to be able to know if it's actually what I would say Marxist coded or not. And there's a lot of shows that are being called woke that are not Marxist coded, that do not violate these principles and are good shows. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're lumping it into the woke group when it's not, because that means you can't tell the difference. And I think you should make the effort to be able to tell the difference.
And this will bring me to sort of the controversial screed I want to make near the end of this, right? Which we talked about at the very beginning, which is, I'm openly a pretty conservative guy. I consider myself politically libertarian. I'm personally conservative in my life. You do what you want to do as long as you don't bother me. That's, I think, a fair middle ground. But I live my personal life relatively conservatively as a Muslim, whatever. And that's how I live my life and my family. So with all that said, the danger I think that we've been getting to in the last year especially has been the discourse on the right on woke, where suddenly everything that you don't like is put into woke, right? Even the other. So now you're having this whole concept of the woke right, which has essentially been invented by what I would call the neocons, whose entire agenda is warmongering and this and that. And so if you are a conservative that doesn't support that, you are woke right. And I'll give you an example that's very intimate to us. Lorena, that you and I have shared many times panels with Nina Infinity, right? And Nina and I have often disagreed on pop culture and stuff like that. Nina, she's Iranian. And she's not a religious person by her own admission, right? She's not a conservative Iranian. However, she's very proud of her heritage, and she doesn't support these events that have been happening for the last month, right? She doesn't support this conflict, and she doesn't support watching Iran being bombed. Again, we don't have to get into arguments what people believe is right or wrong. I'm sharing an example of a friend of mine, right? So Reina knows I've disagreed with Nina intensively on a lot of these political issues. However, I went to Nina's defense when she did a video, on YouTube explaining why she, as an Iranian woman, doesn't support this war, right? And that doesn't mean she's a supporter of the current government. And I saw her comments were filled with people calling her woke right and a leftist and all this stuff. I can't believe you, are out there saying this stuff. And I went to her defense. I was saying, you know what? This is her authentic opinion. Guess what? People that don't support wars have a long tradition in the conservative side, long before Ron Paul, right? But I mean, so that's right. That is very much a real part of the conservative movement, and to then dismiss that as not conservative because you don't like it, right, is the kind of mindset of woke just becomes whatever I say it is. And that's and then this poor woman who's often taken conservative positions on public on pop culture that I don't share. We've argued with them about, right? And I'm like, I think you're more right than me on that. Amina is now being attacked as a leftist because she has this political stance, one that I personally happen to share. But again, those are personal politics. But what it comes down to is this, we need now to not do this repackaging of woke to be whatever I don't like, because you're going to lose a lot of people with that crap.
Totally. And that's why this is important. That's why I'm happy that Lorena is hosting this discussion. And I've heard Lorena, I've seen your post. I've seen you. This is a major issue. I think this is becoming a major friction point because, like you said, Cameron, people are packaging it into whatever they want it to be. And what's happening is they're getting it wrong a lot. And I think once you start getting it wrong, you're becoming the problem. So again, none of us are 100% right, but let's try, because I don't think we're really against diversity. Diversity is a good thing. I just hate that it's been weaponized by this one group. And that's why I'm saying focus on the weaponization. Don't focus on the diversity, because they're just using it that way. But diversity is a good thing, and we've all benefited from it. So
it's like this. It's like children. Children have to be taught to be racist. They don't know it. You put little children in a kindergarten together, they play with other children. They fight 100%. With other children. They're often fascinated by that someone looks a little different from them. That's something that has to be inculcated through their parents and environment. It's not natural to the human condition. Yes, there's an element where the human beings feel safer with their tribe, yet there is a natural fascination and longing for the other, right? There is. It's inherent. You know why? On a DNA level, we need it. We need it. All the people are like, oh, I don't like it. There's literally this whole movement on, race mixing is woke, whatever. It's like, you know what? Whenever I've seen people of, half white, half black children, they're really good looking. They're like supermodels.
They are, yeah.
They are. I mean, multi-race kids, they are really good looking. You know why? Because DNA wants to diversify. Right? It wants to protect against diseases, and it needs various complicated. Look, Lorena, it needs genetic diversity.
How many times it's just like, let's play this game. What country do I not have ancestry from? Like, let's play that game. It's just, when you look back and you see, just especially again with the 1500s, with the age of exploration. That's why I have DNA from China, from Mexico, from Norway, from Angola, from
the Moors.
All of that. Yeah, the Moors, exactly. There's another one. I have, DNA matches from Algeria, Morocco, all of that. Why? Because you had a lot of mixing that was going on then. And I find the people who tend to be all the against, that it's something to go, it's something to happen with you. My brother-in-law is white. You guys know that. You've seen, like, my nieces and nephews are absolutely beautiful. I love them. I love them to death. But it's just like, don't go out here saying the very things that make you into the very thing that you said that you were against. And I think that's what a lot of people are starting to forget here.
Well, what happened was, in around 2012, 2013, this came out of nowhere, right? I wasn't expecting this sort of like neo-Marxist, like institutional takeover of society. Like, I was like, what the heck is this? So I think we were shocked by it.
I was expecting it because I was working with these people in writers' room. And I saw where it was going.
Oh, wow. See,
we're out here in the ether. I mean, I didn't pay attention, and all of a sudden Ghostbusters 2016 shows up, and I'm like, wait, hold the phone. What is this? Am I taking crazy pills, or what the heck is going on here? And it just started from there. But
it was such a rapid institutional takeover. I think that we were right to resist this and to fight back and to call it out and to fight, and it got labeled woke, and we're like, this is bad. And for so long, we were right. And there was so much bad stuff out there, but things are changing. You have to be able to adapt to it. Don't be low resolution. Take some time, give these things a chance. Try to figure out what's right and wrong on this, and then try to stick on the winning team to the best of your abilities.
Again, that's, like I said, that's why I believe people are either feudalists or libertarians. A feudalist means I control the vast majority of people's thought processes for my own power and safety and wealth, right? And everyone has to think like me, right? And people have certain roles they play for me. Whereas a libertarian, like I said, I'm a conservative Muslim. You're a gay Jewish guy. You go do your thing. You go do your thing. You go do your thing. You know, I ain't gonna bother you. You don't bother me. We're all great. We can have dinner together.
Right.
We can hang out. You know, that's my. There's people that want to give everyone else the freedom to be themselves, and there's people that want to control. And fundamentally, it comes down to that.
It's kind of like a quote that someone I know, Andrew Wilkow, he's got a show on a Patriot channel. He's libertarian. He says, your freedom to be you means my freedom to not have to be around you.
Yeah, that's part of it too. That's part of it too. I actually had this argument in law school. Where we were talking about property rights, and one of my sort of progressive woke classmates in law school back in 1990s was really offended when I was saying, you know, part of freedom is that I have the right to not include somebody in my house. If I don't want to have somebody in my property, I can say no to them, right? For whatever reason, they don't, you know,
boundaries.
But he's like, no, we should be able to legislate. You know, you don't have the right to be racist and not let somebody of another race in your house. It's my loss if I don't want to let somebody in for a bad reason, but it's my right to have a loss, right? You don't get to determine. Like I said, you do whatever you want in your house. I do whatever I want in my house, right?
Boundaries.
Exactly.
He couldn't accept that.
Exactly.
I had to adopt his thing. He couldn't, you know, it's actually a fascinating conversation I had where, you know, when someone was saying about how you can, you know, should the government prevent, let's say, you know, like that whole argument about is a conservative Christian required to bake a cake for a gay family? And I am of the legal position, and actually the Supreme Court did agree with that. I have a legal position is that no, if you don't want to, you know why? As a libertarian, somebody else will take their business. Somebody else will take their business. And if the whole community doesn't like that you're excluding this person, they're going to drop out of your business. And that's the economics will solve the problem. To mandate that they have to do something against their ethics and their beliefs, you're not changing their beliefs. You're just increasing their resentment and desire to rebel against the system, right? Exactly. And I said this, and people were offended, but I was like, no, somebody doesn't want to let me into their restaurant because I'm Muslim. Fine, I'm going to take my nice green currency and give it to that other restaurant. You don't want my money? See you later, sucker. See you later, sucker. I don't have to force you to like me. I'm not going to.
Well, you know who definitely wants our money, and I will actually close out with this. Illumination definitely wants our money, and if you know, you know. If you don't, it's okay. You're still gonna laugh. I had to show this.
His last grossman was this.
This is flaming dragon.
Okay, flaming dragon. Fuckface. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face. I don't know what kind of Pacific bullshit power play you're trying to pull here, but Asia Jack is my territory. Whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have and I will rain down in a godly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you. I will fuck you up.
This is what AI is for.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And by the way, real quick, I just want to
portrayal of Hollywood in history. Tropic Thunder, still the most accurate portrayal. Nothing's changed.
And real quick, DAL Dalu 8730. I am not a gay Jew. Cameron was just using that as a reference point. He wasn't referring to me. Yes. I am a straight Jewish American man.
And so as they said in Seinfeld, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not that there's anything wrong with
that. I love the Super Mario movie, Super Mario Galaxy movie. Have you seen it? Have you guys seen it yet?
I have. No, I've seen it.
I've not seen it yet.
I liked it. I had no problem with it. It's a video game movie. It's doing something a little different. So I think the people judging it on I'm a writer, and Cameron, you know, I'm really hard on I really care about I'm making a pass on some of these video game adaptations. They're doing something different. There's a different effect they're trying to achieve. And I think Super Mario Brothers does it, and I think they do it really well. My kids loved it, by the way.
I loved it. I watched it I paid for 3D. I paid for the upgraded experience because I just wanted to be in the darn movie and all the different video games. Like I played that one, I played Bowser's Fury, I played that, and the whole story, the characters, everything. It was just so much fun. People were just laughing. Families just having fun. It's an absolutely fun movie.
My kids literally dug up Mario Galaxy and they started playing it now. So while they were playing it, I was like, oh my God, that's from the movie. So there were references I was missing.
So a movie a movie franchise, which I don't think it has it, but it would work as an incredible video game, are these Ready or Not films. Have you seen these Ready or Not films? The first and the second?
I haven't seen them yet.
Incredibly good. I mean, and they would make a great video game because they're about this poor woman who's being, she gets married to a rich family, discovers that she's the part of, the situation. They have to sacrifice her to the devil, and she's got to hide out in the mansion and survive 24 hours where they're trying to kill her, right? And that's an incredible video game right there. Where and the sequel was as good as the first. The sequel just came out, so if you haven't, I would urge you guys to watch these movies because they're wildly entertaining. They're based, they're just original movies like Sinners was, and they would actually make an incredible video game where you're being hunted by Illuminati people inside this mansion and you're trying to get through the night. That's a video game.
Wow.
That's really cool. I'll have to watch that. I think I just heard about it, but I hadn't watched it before. So I'll have to put it on my list. I just heard about
it too. I mean, it's a sequel, and and it's one of those rare sequels where literally like this is as good as the original. This is as entertaining as the original. And so, again, it's those rare examples of Sinners of an original IP where someone just came up with an idea with its own rules and it just works.
Wow.
And it won't be woke, and it will not be woke under this, right? It won't be. It's funny because the first movie was a bunch of rich white people in a mansion. Second movie is the story continues now with the rest of the Illuminati families, and they're from all over the planet.
Okay, that's when Sarah Michelle Gellar was in. Okay,
poor woman, right? It's really
that's too funny. That is too.
Yeah,
funny.
Sarah Michelle Gellar is great in it.
Okay, I'll have to put that on my list because I still have to go see Project Hail Mary. I still have to.
That was great. I loved it.
See that one. Yeah, I just haven't had time, but that's been on my list. But Super Mario Galaxy was the one. Like, we gotta go see it. My kids like, we gotta go see it.
Now, and it's me, because all these world events are happening. I've been distracted. We have a moon mission going on right now. We just had
Artemis
first moon mission since 1973 or 4.
Yeah,
right?
I was trying to watch the launch from my house, but it was foggy and it was hazy, so we weren't able to see it.
Moon missions, and I couldn't believe that. I was so obsessed by world events that I like literally missed the actual live showing of the flyby and the photos that they've taken from the dark side of the moon. I mean, they're better than the stuff that was taken by Apollo 8 because obviously we have better photographic technology right now, and it just blows your mind to see these photos. These are the first human beings that have gone to the moon, even in the orbit of the moon, since the 1970s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're still out there. They still haven't landed. They're on their way back.
What was crazy is I was in Washington, D.C. last week with my son on a field trip. It was like a week-long trip, whatever, and we went to the Smithsonian. And so with the entire 8th grade, we got to watch the Artemis take off. It was really cool. Unbelievable timing. So cool.
Yeah.
I really thought we were going to go back to the moon. I now believe we will land within the next 2 years. I now believe it. And that will be amazing. Now, while I believe in many conspiracy theories, I actually do believe we went to the moon. My caveat is this: I'm not sure the footage they showed us was the actual footage. Right? That's the conspiracy theory. Is the footage they showed us of Armstrong on the moon what actually happened there? They tried to show that in one of those Transformer movies that there was something else going on the moon, and we weren't allowed to see. Right?
You need to start a YouTube channel, conspiracies with Kamran.
Conspiracy theories.
I haven't been proven wrong yet.
And then dive into them, man.
I just want to see an astronaut walking. Yeah, I want jumping around, all that, moon shoes. One day I'll have to break down all the stuff that I did while I was at NASA because there's stuff I'll have to point it out, but there's stuff that I've seen like in Artemis that I've worked on. The little tiny ball rise with the little cap and everything. He's made out of a thermal blanket. So I've actually touched one of those when one of the shuttles would come back.
I mean,
So
that's
it
one
was-
billion. You're a very small group of people that were involved in that. Wow.
Yeah, so I got to hang out with that. Yeah, I was.
Well, we'll do an Armstrong moon landing analysis at video at some point. We'll do maybe on Doug's channel.
Have to.
Yeah, but
Back where the
as someone
astronauts
who
was.
refuses to believe that we're going to the moon, I'm enjoying the story.
If you think it's something different than the jar Nutella went fly back in 0G, they did the same thing with Tang. I'm just saying.
Well, look, the
Tang.
best argument that it was faked, by Stanley Kubrick is The Shining, because The Shining has all these interesting, weird. If you watch the videos, people analyzing footage in The Shining that seems to suggest he's saying, "I made the moon landing video. It's fake." It's a very fascinating video. You should look into it. Whatever. That's a whole other conversation.
Oh, that would be a fun one.
Oh my gosh. Well, folks, as always, time is always too short, especially when you have good friends on the channel talking. Kamran, where can people find you and what you got going on, my dear?
Well, I've got my Patreon, and it's a great chance to get my commentary on what's happening in Hollywood. Also, I've been publishing my third novel, which is the story of Esther, right? Which is very relevant today. Things are happening in Iran, and so people can get the chapters on that on my. But most importantly, it's a great way for you to get consulting if you are a budding screenwriter or novelist. I've worked on both. Doug Burton, I've worked with him. I actually just did a fantasy novel consult for a Patreon member who wrote a 775-page novel that I did a consult for her on, and it's actually a really good book. I was delighted. I think she's going to become a published.
Was it Brianna?
No, it wasn't Brianna. I worked with Brianna. It was a wonderful film. This is another member of Patreon who wants to be a novelist and wrote an incredible fantasy novel that I think can get published. And I'm rooting for her. So it's a great way if you want, because I'm a published novelist, two-time published novelist, as well as a decently successful Hollywood screenwriter. So it's a great way for you to, if you have aspirations in that area, to come work with me through the Patreon. So,
and then I will vouch for Kamran. In fact, Kamran, I have a second draft of the screenplay I worked on from. I literally just finished it, so I got to contact you.
I'm ready. Drop me a DM. Let's do it.
Okay. So yeah, I'll personally vouch for Kamran's service. I've worked with Kamran on books and on screenplays, and I know, and I've spoken with several other people who've worked with him as well. You'll get great, honest feedback, which is what you need if you really want some help in that department.
Thank you so much. And Douglas, how can we get in touch with everything you're doing?
You could sub to my channel as well. I'm much more sporadic. I wish I was more regular, but I tend to jump in when there's a big topic or a big movie or something that really grips me. Cameron is a regular guest on there. Reina, Retro Nerd Girl comes on there. Heath Robinson. And then Lance from the Outcast Creative sometimes will be on there as well. And then Paulie from Latino Slant every now and then. So we'll have good discussions. I really care about these things, and I like having substantive conversations like the one we had tonight on the channel. And like Kamran, I just finished a novel as well. I'm in the refining process and getting it toward the publication. It's the second book for Empress Theodora. I'm really happy with it. I think it came out really good. I'm kind of getting excited about it. So lots of things on the horizon coming up for me as well. So
great. Exciting stuff. All right. Well, wishing everybody well, wishing everyone safety in the strange world that we're in. And hopefully just stay positive. If there's any message that I think the three of us can come out of all of our analysis today is be authentic to yourself and let everybody else be themselves. That's the best way to live life. Be true to yourself and let everybody else be true to themselves. It's a good way to live.
Absolutely. Well, folks, as for me, okay, what day is it? It's Thursday. Okay, so Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern, Resort Recon Live. That's what we talk about. Catch up on all the theme park news that's going on out there. That's on Saturday at 12. Saturday at 8 p.m., the watch show for one of my favorite 80s cartoon movies. I'm probably going to cry again. The Last Unicorn. So we're going to be watching that one. I'm going to have to bring my tissues. And Sunday, of course, is the Welcome to Florida show. Pretty much going to be discussing the Artemis 2 mission because that's where it launched from. So we're more than likely going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about my time at NASA. Hopefully I can bring some other people on as well to give you kind of insight of all the people and the work that it takes to pull something like that off. So we're going to talk about that. And as always, please do subscribe to all my wonderful panelists. I will have to have Doug and Kamran back sooner rather than later. Let's put that on the schedule. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Take care. God bless. And we will see you all next time. Bye.